Hey guys, tonight we're diving into something that smells like cinnamon and incense but rots like blood under a velvet floorboard. You're about to enter a world gilded in gold leaf, powdered wigs, and glasses of wine that taste sweeter than truth. This is the story of noble women's wine rituals, but not the dainty brunch kind. No, these were secret, sultry, and strangely powerful, and you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I mean, you're already here. The chalice is being passed around, and the air smells like crushed rose petals and something metallic. Also, drop a comment with your city and what time it is. I love seeing where in the world you're watching from, especially when the stories get this weird. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing at the threshold of a Venetian palazzo. The year is 1587. The air is thick with the damp, mineral smell of the canal just outside, but once you cross the threshold, it gives way to a heady bouquet of burning clove, musk oil, and spiced wine. The room you step into is dim, lit by oil lamps and thick candles dripping into hand-carved sconces. Heavy drapes in dark crimson and violet shut out the light of the moon. Or maybe the drapes are meant to keep the noise in. A few women lounge on silk cushions arranged in a crescent near the hearth, their faces barely visible under intricate half-masks made of bone, glass, or black lace. You weren't invited exactly, more like summoned by an older woman in a dove-grey gown who never once told you her name. She met you at the fish market earlier that week of all places, and pressed a sealed card into your gloved palm without breaking eye contact. Midnight. Wear garnet, it read. That was it. You're wearing garnet now, a deep red velvet bodice that feels a bit too tight, with sleeves you had to pin in a hurry. You're painfully aware that you don't belong here, that these women, laughing softly and sipping from oddly shaped goblets, have been doing this a long, long time. You feel their eyes on you from behind their masks. You are being weighed. A slim woman in a pearl choker beckons you to sit beside her. Her voice is low and syrupy. She pours you a goblet of wine from a decanter shaped like a swan with gold eyes. The wine is unusually dark, almost black, and when you sip it, it tastes like cherries, pepper, and something coppery beneath the sweetness. You cough a little. Someone giggles. "This is the ritual wine," says the woman in the pearls, her lips barely moving. "Crushed at new moon, fermented with wormwood, ash bark, and something the priest would faint to hear named." Her eyes sparkle behind a mask made of jet and mother of pearl. "But you'll get used to it." You're not so sure. There's a lull in the conversation as the hostess, a widow known only as Contessa Lucrezia, raises her glass. She wears full mourning, black silk, onyx earrings, and a veil that falls to her waist. Yet her tone is anything but mournful. "To our foremothers," she says, "who drank before us, bled before our woe, and died in flames rather than spill a word." Everyone raises their glasses. You do too, because not doing so would feel like stepping off a cliff blindfolded. Later, as the room settles into the slower rhythm of post-toast murmurings, you overhear fragments, names you don't recognize, places that may not exist on any modern map. A woman speaks of an ancestor who escaped the sack of Constantinople with a recipe for wine of the red moon. Another laughs and says her great-grandmother used to smuggle jars of it sewn into the lining of her corsets. Then there's the talk of masks. You learn each one means something: bone for grief, lace for longing, glass for those seeking answers. No one wears gold, that's reserved for ritual leaders, and none are present tonight. Or so you're told. Someone touches your arm and hands you a folded handkerchief. It's embroidered with a sigil you can't decipher, but the fabric is warm, as if recently clutched tight. And all the while, the wine keeps flowing. Here's a historical fact to chew on, while the scent of frankincense curls up your nose. In Renaissance Venice, noble women were often forbidden from attending public drinking houses or bottega, but behind closed doors their wine rituals were not only tolerated, they were whispered about with both awe and fear, because sometimes the forbidden bleeds into the sacred, and sometimes the sacred gets drunk and starts plotting. A woman named Beatrice tells a story that stops the room cold, about her aunt, who 3 years ago took part in a similar gathering. The wine had turned early that season, fermented too fast or not enough. Within a week, 3 women were dead. One slipped in her bath, she says flatly. One choked on a plum pit. One vanished. Her name is not to be spoken here. Nor remembered, someone adds sharply. And that's that. You try to ask what's actually in the wine. You get vague answers. Roots, roses, red clay, moonlight. No one admits to knowing the full recipe. The Contessa smiles from her dark corner and says, "The less you know, the more the wine reveals." It's not comforting. There's one woman, older than the rest, with fingers stained the colour of mulberries. She hasn't spoken all evening, just traced her finger around the lip of her goblet in slow circles. She finally leans toward you and whispers, "Did you know wine used to be fermented with blood? Animal, usually, but not always." Then she chuckles and leans back like she just told a joke. You don't know whether to laugh or leave, and here's a quirky little historical footnote. Some early vintners did in fact experiment with blood in fermentation. Pig's blood usually. Believed to make the wine heartier, earthier. Some even thought it warded off spirits. The church banned the practice, of course, but not everyone listens to bans. By the time the third decanter is opened, the rumour's changed. Or maybe it's just your vision. The shadows move more easily now. The candlelight flickers in patterns that almost resemble script. The wine tastes less sweet now, more bitter. The laughter has slowed, deepened. There's a hush like expectation, as if something is about to begin, or maybe already has. The clink of the goblets echoes faintly through the velvet-draped salon, but it's not the sound that unsettles you. It's the silence that follows. A thick, pressing stillness that settles over the group like fog curling off a grave. The candles flicker again, but this time you're not imagining it. The air changes. Even the perfumed haze seems to shift into something heavier, darker, more ceremonial. Lucrezia stands now, and her movements are deliberate, like a swan drifting across black water. She doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't have to. The room bends toward her presence. She lifts a smaller chalice this time, silver and ornate, with tiny animal faces etched into the base, foxes, owls, serpents. You recognise none of them from any church registry. This is not the goblet of communion. This is older. She speaks in a language you don't understand, not quite Latin, not quite Italian, but something with syllables that feel too round in your mouth. The women answer in soft harmony, a single chanted line that repeats like the tide, and then, one by one, they come forward to the chalice. Each woman takes a sip, but before she drinks, she whispers something into the goblet. You're close enough to hear a few words. Regret. Infidelity. Desire. One woman laughs nervously before speaking and then downs her sip in a single gulp. Another starts crying silently, still clutching the stem of the chalice even after she's passed it along. You watch as the silver seems to darken with each confession. When it's your turn, Lucrezia holds the chalice in front of you with both hands, her black veil framing her face like a shadowed painting. Speak, she says, and there's no space for silence in her command. You open your mouth, not even sure what you're going to say, and then it comes. Something from deep in your chest, a truth you hadn't even realised you carried. You say it. The words sound brittle, then you drink. The wine tastes completely different this time. Gone is the cherry sweetness. Now it's cold, earthy, as if it came from a root cellar rather than a bottle. You feel it pass your throat like a whisper made solid. Ancestral communion, Lucrezia says once the chalice is returned to her. We speak our burdens into the cup and we drink them. That is the pact. That is the tether. There's no applause, no smile of celebration. Just a shared glance across masked faces. A ritual fulfilled. A tradition maintained. This is not for show. This is legacy. A girl near the window, maybe 16, stirs from her cushion and begins to speak. Her name is Sylvia, and she's a daughter of the Trissino house, one of the oldest noble lines in Venice, known for their estates, their tragedies, and their unnaturally long-lived widows. Sylvia tells a story passed down from her great-grandmother, who spoke of a time when women gathered under the guise of spinning clubs. They didn't spin thread, they spun secrets. They traded recipes for fermented berries soaked in elderbark and vinegar. Some say the wine was used to bind dreams. Others claim it held memories not your own. She pauses, brushing her dark hair behind one ear. They said if you drink it at the right hour, you remember things you never lived. A soft gasp from someone behind you. Another woman crosses herself. Then someone else adds, "That was before they buried the names." And suddenly you realise that tonight's gathering isn't just a quaint tradition, it's defiance, wrapped in velvet and poured into stemware. You're not here for wine, you're here for history, living, breathing, and possibly cursed. Now here's a little real-world context to tether this thing to the ground. Across Renaissance Europe, especially in Italy and France, there's documented evidence of noblewomen forming exclusive social circles, sometimes called salons, where ritualised drinking took place. These weren't just tea parties. Many were modelled loosely after ancient Roman bacchanalia, but adapted to the strict gender roles of the time. Think of it as the female version of secret societies like the Freemasons. Less stone-cutting, more cherry wine, and encoded poetry. But here's the scholarly rub. There's the endless debate about whether these wine rituals were proto-feminist resistance or just elaborate social bonding. Some historians claim they were safe havens for self-expression, knowledge exchange, and even proto-medical care, especially for women dealing with grief, fertility, or control over their own bodies. Others argue that's wishful modern thinking layered over what was really just elite gossip dressed up in symbolism. And then there's the even murkier theory that these rituals trace back to ancient goddess worship and pagan rites, carried secretly through generations of women, hidden behind Christian iconography and respectable marriages. That the wine was a sacrament not to God, but to something much older. You look down at your goblet, suddenly wary of what you just swallowed. Lucrezia speaks again, this time with a faint smile. What we do here is older than the church, older than your family's name. The wine has tasted every generation and still lingers on our tongues. You try to gauge whether she believes it or is just performing. But there's no performance in her voice. She believes it. They all do. A woman in amber lace leans toward you and whispers, "I once saw a woman drink and then fall into a trance. She spoke Latin fluently, though she'd never studied. She named her great-grandmother's midwife. We later found her name in a burial ledger." You shiver. The fire suddenly feels distant. You're not cold, but your skin prickles with something like recognition. And now the quirky fringe fact of the night. Some esoteric texts from the 17th century refer to mirror vintages, wines made only during eclipses or specific planetary alignments, believed to reflect the soul of the drinker. No one really knows what that means, but alchemists paid good money for bottles to echo the blood of the vine. And yes, some of those texts were written by women, quietly under male pseudonyms, hidden in cookbooks. The gathering continues with a new ritual, this one quieter, more private. A book is passed around, its cover worn and spine cracked. Inside, each woman writes a line, one sentence, never more. No one reads aloud. When it reaches you, the page is open to a space between two faded entries. You stare at the empty line. What do you write? You hesitate, pen in hand, feeling the weight of all the confessions inked before you. Then you write something instinctive. Maybe a memory, maybe a warning. As you hand it off, a breeze cuts through the room, despite the closed windows and the thick drapery. The candles flicker again, this time violently. One extinguishes. Lucrezia lifts her chin. She's arrived. Everyone nods, like this makes perfect sense. You want to ask who she is, but no one answers unspoken questions here. The extinguished candle leaves a crescent of darkness in the corner of the room. No one moves to relight it. The flicker of its dying flame seems to ripple through the gathering like a silent bell, and suddenly, the wine in your cup tastes colder, less like fruit and more like forgotten stone. You shift on your cushion, uncertain whether you're meant to feel honoured or afraid. Maybe both. She doesn't like fire, someone whispers beside you, voice barely audible. It reminds her of the first time they tried to burn her. You look over, startled. The woman, older, with gold-threaded braids and a sharp aquiline nose, stares straight ahead, her face expressionless. No mask. Just her skin, lean and wise, as if daring the room to challenge her authority. Then Lucrezia speaks again, but not to the women this time. She faces the empty space where the candle once burned and bows her head. Her veil droops forward like the hood of a crow. We invite the one who watched us from the hill. We pour for the one who danced with our foremothers in shadow. May she carry the weight of what we release tonight. The woman beside you, the one who whispered about fire, pours a small amount of wine onto the floor. directly onto the velvet carpet. Not a drop touches her sleeve. The red disappears into the dark fibres like blood into burial earth. It isn't performative, it's precise. You realise then that you're not at a wine tasting or a book club or a pretty ritual dressed up for fun. You're at something older, something that has survived centuries by pretending it didn't exist. Each woman now takes a second goblet, smaller, rimmed in black. These are filled with a different wine, darker, thicker, almost blue in the low light. It smells of myrrh, resin, and decay. You feel like you've stumbled into a funeral disguised as a party. A woman named Elena tells the group about her family's vineyard tucked away into the hills near Siena. According to her, there's a single row of vines that produce this particular vintage, and only if pruned by a woman whose mother died in childbirth. She says the soil there is enriched with centuries of offerings, ashes, bone dust, hair wrapped in black thread. You want to ask if she's joking, but no one laughs. Now's probably a good time to drop in a historical breadcrumb. While there's little mainstream documentation of vineyards using human remains in fermentation, there is strong evidence that burial sites, especially in ancient Etruscan and early Roman regions, were located near vineyards. The symbolism was cyclical. Death nourishes the earth, and the earth gives back the wine. Of course the church eventually sanctified these lands, or tried to. But some families, especially matrilineal ones, kept older beliefs alive under new names. Back in the room, the black-rimmed goblets are lifted. Lucrezia recites another phrase in that strange language, and the others echo it softly. You recognise one word repeated 3 times, madre. The drink this time is not about confession. It's about memory. This wine, you're told, is only consumed in honour of the ones who came before. The ones who were burned, drowned, silenced, or simply erased from family trees. It is a toast to the forgotten. You hesitate before drinking. Something in your spine tells you that once you do, there's no going back. But your hand lifts anyway. The cup touches your lips. It tastes wrong. Not bad, not bitter, just unsettling. Like blackberries steeped in old paper. You catch a fleeting flavour, ink, charred wood. It curls across your tongue like a secret you're not supposed to know yet. Immediately you feel lightheaded. Not drunk. More like you've lost your centre of gravity. The walls don't spin, they bend. You see Lucrezia's face shift under her veil, her features rearranged by flickering candlelight into something both youthful and ancient. Your eyes blink, and it's gone. Some say, someone murmurs, that this wine carries memories, not just ours, but theirs. Theirs, you ask, voice soft like it might break. The dead, the watchers, the buried women who made us. It feels like myth. It should feel like myth. But in this room, where the pointing shimmers like ink in the lamplight, it starts to feel like something else, something real. A silence falls again, and then the women begin to share. Not confessions this time. Visions, strange dreams, fragments that came to them after past rituals. One saw herself giving birth in a cave filled with glowing moss. Another dreamed of being bound in reeds and floated down a river, only to be pulled from the water by a masked woman with a dagger in her teeth. Another described waking with a name in her mouth. Annuncia, a name she'd never heard but later found on an old family tomb in Mantua. They call these wine dreams, hallucinations maybe, or ancestral echoes, depending on who you ask. A woman named Sophia tells the story of her cousin, who drank the memory wine and later claimed she could read bones, not just animal ones, but human. She was arrested within the year for practicing necromancy, though the charges were quietly dropped when her father paid a hefty bribe. Now she lives alone, on a cliffside near Ravenna, paints only in red. The story hushes the group. You look around. Some women look intrigued, others look afraid. A few seem exhausted, like this is a truth they've carried too long. Now, for your quirky fact of the evening. In certain pre-Christian Balkan traditions, women would ferment wine with strands of hair and fingernail clippings, symbols of identity, believing the drink would bind them to their ancestors' wisdom. These wines were stored in shadowy places and only opened on solstices or equinoxes, not something you'd find in a sommelier's guide, but referenced quietly in oral histories and buried beneath layers of Christian ritual. Back in the salon, the ritual begins to wind down. The black goblets are placed together on a small circular table in the centre of the room, forming a ring. A sprig of rosemary is placed in the middle. No one explains why. The candle that went out at the beginning? Still dead. No one speaks of relighting it. Lucrezia steps forward one last time and raises a final toast. To the ones who kept the line, may their shadows walk beside us. You echo the words because everyone else does, but the wine has made your lips numb and your throat tight. When you rise to leave, because it's over now, or at least paused, Lucrezia takes your hand and places something inside it. A smooth stone, carved with a spiral, still warm. You'll need this, she says, when the dreams start. You clutch the stone, and for a moment, swear you feel it pulse once, and the door opens, without anyone touching it. The hall beyond the ritual chamber is colder than you remember. Not cold in the way of temperature, but in the way a long empty room feels after the people have left. A hush that wraps itself around your shoulders like a shroud. You still clutch the carved spiral stone in your palm, the imprint now etched into your skin, though it's unclear whether from pressure or something deeper. The sounds of laughter and whispered visions remain behind you, trapped in the drapes and dark corners like perfume lingering on lace. You step away from them, but then don't let go. The corridor leads you to a room with high latticed windows. Moonlight breaks through in stripes, painting the floor in silvery bars. You pause, momentarily disoriented, until a soft voice invites you in. Don't worry, it says. This space is just for us. Oh, you turn. 3 women are seated around a low table scattered with silks, old letters, and dried herbs bundled in twine. One gestures to an empty pillow. You sit. This isn't a continuation of the previous ceremony. It's something more intimate. They pour no wine. Instead, they open small glass bottles and dab scented oils on their wrists and temples. Clove, juniper, something almost sweet like crushed violets and dried blood. It's disarmingly peaceful, like stumbling into a confessional where no one expects repentance. The oldest of the trio, a woman with a long scar curling down her neck, begins to speak. These gatherings, what you just saw, are only the outer layer, a shell for protection. What we do here, in the quiet, is the core. She picks up a letter and lays it flat. The paper is old, its ink faded but legible. The script is slanted, elegant, feminine. She traces a line with her finger. All good secrets are whispered behind closed shutters. It's not just wine, she explains. It's the way we pass our stories. The rituals are only a vehicle. This, she lifts another folded note sealed with wax, is the cargo. You realise that every woman in that salon likely has a bundle of these hidden somewhere. A private archive of truths too fragile for books, too dangerous for conversation. Over the next hour, or what feels like an hour, time has become slippery. You listen to stories read aloud from these letters. Not in full, never in full, but in carefully chosen excerpts. Some are mundane, recipes, childbirth instructions, herbal remedies that never made it to any physician's ledger. Others are darker, coded warnings, political schemes whispered behind wine-stained curtains, accusations of sorcery buried beneath carefully chosen euphemisms. And here's the secret, these letters weren't written for their daughters. They were written for each other. Passed from woman to woman across generations, not by bloodline, but by selection, by initiation. You're being tested, clearly. Judged not by what you know, but by how you listen. Here's your historical footnote. By the 1500s, the literacy rate among noblewomen in Venice had quietly risen, even while formal education remained limited. Many women were taught to read and write solely to manage estates and correspondence while their husbands were at sea or war. But this literacy became a quiet revolution. Secret letter-writing networks grew, particularly among widows and unmarried noblewomen, circles that mirrored the structure of male secret societies. The letters they exchanged weren't always overt. Many were coded with botanical symbols, embroidery patterns, and wine recipes laced with a metaphor. One woman pulls out a piece of crimson silk. On it, stitched in golden thread, is what looks like a grapevine, except each leaf curls into something closer to a crescent moon than a fig. She embroidered this after her first ritual, the woman says softly. We think it was meant to tell us what she couldn't say out loud. And just like that, you realise the wine rituals are more than symbolic. They're encryption. A way to conceal knowledge in plain sight. In scent, in taste, in colour. The letters continue, and one catches your attention more than the others. The woman reading it, quiet, soft-spoken, veiled in rose silk, clears her throat as she holds up a fragile page. We toasted with violet wine under a dying moon. Anna said she dreamed of serpents in the walls. Lucrezia laughed until her goblet cracked. The crack was not an accident. Nothing ever is. The reader sets it down without a word. No one asks who Anna was. No one mentions the goblet. Instead, one of them places a long-stemmed glass bottle on the table. It holds wine so pale, it looks silver. For grieving, she says, only drunk when the last letter has been read and the shutters closed. You don't ask what the wine tastes like. You don't want to know yet. Now here's your quirky detail for tonight. There's a fringe theory that noblewomen used wine not only for ritual, but as a mnemonic device. Each vintage, colour and aroma was tied to a specific memory or event. Violet for mourning, honey wine for births, spiced plum for betrayals. Drinking a particular vintage would be like opening a mental archive. Memory and taste twined together like lovers in silk sheets. Unproven, of course, but the consistency across scattered letters suggests some truth beneath the romance. The scarred woman, her name is Paula, leans toward you suddenly. Have you heard of the house with no doors? You blink. No. She described it. The woman who wrote that last letter said it only appears in dreams after you've drunk the grief wine. No doors, no windows, just vines creeping through cracks and a table set for 13. The room stills. The other two women exchange glances, something hung tight behind their eyes. She never woke, Paula says, but the next spring a vine bloomed in her bedroom, no root, no soil, just bloom. You wonder if this is myth or warning, but you've already learnt the rules. Don't ask, just listen, and so you do. The letters are sealed again, each with a different sigil. They're wrapped in silk and slipped into a compartment beneath the floorboards. A candle is extinguished. The shutters are latched. Paula presses a folded scrap into your hand. For when you dream, don't open it before. As you leave the room, the scent of violet clings to your skin. You could swear you hadn't touched any. Outside, the hallway stretches longer than it did before. You take each step carefully, aware now that this house bends, not in architecture, but in purpose. It doesn't exist fully in one place. It unfolds with every ritual, every letter, every goblet passed from hand to hand, and you're already part of it. By the time you return to your room, the carved stone in your hand is warm again, and somewhere far below, a goblet you never touched is filling itself. You sleep eventually, or maybe you don't. It's hard to tell with dreams that feel like full conversations, with scents so vivid you wake up with lavender on your tongue. You remember walking through a field of silver vines, your bare feet pressing into soil that pulsed like breath beneath you. There were voices behind the hedgerows, but they never stepped into the open. One kept whispering your name, stretching it into something softer, older. And when you turned to find her, you woke with the taste of iron in your mouth and a line of purple staining your pillow like spilled ink. The note Paula gave you is still crumpled in your hand. You didn't remember holding it all night, but there it is, creased, slightly damp. You unfold it. If the candle flickers before your reflection speaks, leave. Well, that's not ominous at all. You go to the mirror anyway. Because of course you do. The reflection stares back, bleary-eyed, hair tangled, the last threads of dream still clinging to your skin like spiderwebs. The candle on the bedside table flickers once, then twice, but your reflection doesn't move out of sync. No tricks, no ghosts, just your tired face. You exhale. Maybe you passed. Downstairs the house is quieter. Morning sun presses in through stained glass like spilled wine. Amber and ruby puddles sliding across the floor. The scent of the previous night has changed. The sweetness is gone, replaced by something fainter. Incense burnt down to its core, a ghost of ritual. You follow it to the dining room where breakfast has already been laid. Figs, fresh bread, soft cheese, and 3 different kinds of wine. Yes, wine for breakfast. Apparently that's the kind of life you live now. Each decanter is labelled not by varietal but by mood. One has a tag for forgetfulness, the second for clarity, the third written in a hand that's far too ornate, for courage. You pour a little of the third. It smells like smoked cherries and rosemary. It tastes like the pause before thunder. The other women drift in slowly, sleep-wrinkled but composed. No one mentions the rituals. No one talks about candles or dreams. They eat quietly, exchange glances, share soft laughter over half-remembered things. You get the sense this is part of it too, this calm morning hush. the performance of normalcy. Lucrezia enters last, her veil replaced by a wide-brimmed hat that looks far too modern for the rest of her attire. She smiles at you in a way that makes your stomach twist, pleasant, amused, and entirely unreadable. "You've endured the first night," she says, sipping from your goblet without asking. "Most newcomers crack at the confession. You held." You want to ask what happens to the ones who don't, but you don't. That lesson's already been taught. Later that morning, you find yourself in a smaller salon, this one filled with books, floor to ceiling, every wall covered. Most of the titles have no spine markings, some are blank entirely. A woman you've never met, maybe in her early 30s, gestures for you to sit. Her name is Elisabetta. She doesn't offer her last name. She pours tea this time, not wine, and speaks with a slow, careful rhythm, as if each word has been pre-measured. "There are 3 types of goblets," she says. "One for truth, one for memory, and one for invocation." You raise an eyebrow. "Invocation?" She nods. "For calling what isn't in the room. Yet." You sip the tea. It's earthy and unfamiliar, laced with mint, rosehip, and something faintly bitter. "Elisabetta R.," you murmur, suddenly recalling the name. "The missing diary." Her face hardens. She places her cup down very gently. "You shouldn't know about that. I overheard it. In the ritual." She studies you for a long moment, then stands. She walks to a high shelf and pulls down a worn, leather-bound book with no title. It's cracked at the spine, pages held together by ribbon and habit. She opens to a page in the middle and shows it to you. The handwriting matches the excerpt from the salon 2 nights ago. This isn't the original. That's gone. Stolen, we think. But this is a copy of what she wrote before the last gathering she attended. You lean closer. The page is dated 53 years ago. "I drank black wine under moonless sky. I saw my mother's face in the mirror, not mine. I felt the pull of vines at my ankles. I heard the house speak." "Did she die?" you ask. "No," Elisabetta replies. "She vanished. Left during the harvest moon. Left everything, letters, clothes, lovers, but not the diary." You run your fingers over the page, and for a moment it feels warm. Now here's a real-world rabbit hole. In the archives of multiple noble families across Europe, there are entire branches of the family tree abruptly terminated with vague notes, relocated, removed to the country, joined to the convent, but no burial records, no marriage, just gone. A few historians think these women escaped. A few more think they were erased. And then there are those who suggest they simply went underground, into networks, circles, rituals, and societies too quiet for official records. You turn the page and find something stranger. A pressed flower, perfectly preserved. Indigo petals curled slightly at the edges. Elisabetta watches you, but doesn't explain. "She was obsessed with that flower," she says. "Said it only bloomed once a year on the night the goblets spun." You almost ask what that means, but a strange unease stops you. Something about the flower feels too intentional, like a marker. Or a lock. Elisabetta closes the book and hands it to you. "Take it." You blink. "Why?" "Because it's yours now. You knew her name before I told you, that's the sign." You don't argue. You tuck it under your arm and rise. As you leave the book room, the hall seems brighter than before. But not in a pleasant way. The light feels exposed. Like the house is watching again. And now the fringe fact of the hour. A few rogue scholars have claimed that certain rituals among noblewomen operated on a lunar calendar, not aligned with the religious festivals, but with agricultural omens, blooming patterns, fermentation failures, even animal behaviour. The night the goblets spun, as Elisabetta quoted, was believed to be a key moment, when wine and word combined to open something unseen. No one agrees on what. No one agrees on whether it ever happened, but you believe her. Not because she's convincing, but because when you hold the diary close, it hums. Back in your room, you open to the last page. It's blank, but under the right light, faint ink glimmers into view. You tilt the page, and a line emerges. "Don't speak the truth unless the mirror weeps." You glance at your mirror. A drop of moisture trickles down the glass, and the reflection, your reflection, does not blink. You don't move, not right away. You just stare at the mirror, and it stares back, almost. Your reflection is frozen in mid-thought, like it didn't get the cue that the moment had passed. The droplet trickles slowly down the glass, impossibly slow, until it reaches the edge of the frame and disappears. Still, your reflection doesn't blink, doesn't breathe, doesn't follow you when you tilt your head. And for one cold second, the surface of the glass doesn't look like a reflection at all. It looks like a window. You step back, slowly. The diary is still in your hands, the ink faded again now that the light has shifted. You close the book, heart thudding a little harder than you'd like to admit. The reflection doesn't follow, it just remains there, your frozen twin, till the breeze from the open window nudges the curtain and the mirror fogs faintly at the edges. When you look again, your reflection is normal, blinking, curious. You. But you don't trust it anymore. Downstairs, the house hums with the sound of quiet industry. Women moving through wide halls like silken ghosts. Conversations begin and end in corners you can't see. Laughter breaks and fades before it finds a speaker. You descend the staircase feeling like a thread being pulled through cloth, connected to something but not in control of where you're headed. In the atrium, a long table has been set with several tall, narrow-necked bottles. Each is a different colour. One deep scarlet, one gold, one the palest lavender you've ever seen. The bottles are unlabelled, but they sit beneath painted sigils etched into the long tablecloth. An eye with 3 lashes, a feather pierced by a pin, a goblet dripping over a flame. Lucrezia stands at the head of the table. She looks different today, less formal. Her hair is loose, a thick braid down her back, and her gown is the colour of stormwater. She nods to you as you approach. Today, she says, we begin the colour test. You try to sound like you understand. Of course, Doshita smiles faintly. Everyone lies on the first sip. The women gather around slowly, each one taking a spot near one of the bottles. You're led to the goblet dripping over flame, crimson-stained cloth under your hands. The bottle in front of you gleams like garnet in candlelight. You'll taste all 3, Lucrezia explains. But only one will answer. You don't ask what that means. You just reach for the scarlet bottle and pour. It glugs like syrup, thick and reluctant, as though it doesn't like to be disturbed. You raise the goblet, take a sip, and it hits you immediately. Not like alcohol, not even like bitterness. It hits your ears. A low, vibrating tone that settles in your head like a tuning fork struck too close. You taste smoke. Burnt spices. Wood that shouldn't have burned, but did. Images flash behind your eyes, flickers like scraps of a painting. A woman running barefoot through grapevines at dusk, blood on her hem, a child screaming in a language you don't understand, a hand, yours, holding a chalice too tightly, spilling it onto marble. You gasp and nearly drop the goblet. Lucrezia watches you with interest. You heard something. You nod, blinking hard. The images are gone now, tucked back into whatever folds of reality they slip through. You try the second wine, the gold one. It's lighter, brighter even, but when it touches your tongue, your vision goes dim. You hear laughter, but it's coming from deep inside your chest, and for a moment you don't know if you're remembering joy or if it's being fed to you. Then it fades, like a sunbeam behind a cloud. The lavender wine is last. It smells like dried herbs and candle wax. It tastes like something between rain and lavender oil, and when you swallow you feel nothing, nothing at all. And that somehow is worse. Lucrezia approaches. The red spoke, the others do not want you. You place the goblet down carefully, as if setting aside a loaded weapon. Does everyone get the same result, you ask? No, but the wine chooses. Her voice is steady. Some women are drawn to gold, some only to the lavender, though they never remember what they see. But the scarlet is rare. It's for those whose line has not been broken. You tilt your head. What line? Lucrezia smiles without warmth. The line of remembering. She leads you to a corner of the room where heavy curtains have been drawn back to reveal a painting. It's massive, almost floor to ceiling, dark with age. You can barely make out the figures, but in the centre stands a group of women holding goblets, arranged in a circle. At their feet lie symbols, roots, a key, a shatterwood mirror. One woman in the painting has your exact profile. You're not the first to be chosen by the red, Lucrezia murmurs, but you might be the first to come back from it. You turn sharply. Come back, but she's already walking away. Now here's a grounded historical detail to chew on. Medieval and Renaissance Europe were full of secret societies and underground rites, most male-led, most cloaked in religious or esoteric language. But references to female-only rites are scarcer, often buried in accusations of witchcraft or heretical ritual gatherings. Still, records exist, especially in Italy, of midnight masses held by widows where wine was consumed from non-church chalices and prayers were replaced by stories. Many involved symbolic tasting of different vintages to access types of knowledge. Historians argue over whether this was ritual or just coded autobiography. Either way, the wine wasn't just for drinking, it was for remembering. And here's a fringe theory that some lineages, mostly female, have passed down cellular memory not genetically, but ritually. That wine, when consumed in precise conditions, could act as a kind of key, unlocking generational memories that live not in DNA, but in the psyche. Of course, no one can prove that, but then again, no one's disproved it either. Later that day, you sit alone in the garden. A glass of the red wine rests untouched beside you, and the diary sits in your lap, closed but pulsing like a second heartbeat. You flip to the middle. Another line has appeared. Scarlet speaks, but only when you're sent. You wait, and then, ever so faintly, as wind picks up, and you hear a woman humming in the vines. You don't know the melody, but your mouth does, and you begin to hum along. The humming doesn't stop when you do. That's the first thing you notice. You pause mid-note, expecting silence to fall like it always does when a tune ends, but the melody carries on, a soft, weaving thread of sound that seems to drift from the vines themselves. It's not loud, not haunting in the way the stories say haunted things are. It's gentle, like someone humming to themselves while they braid another's hair, a lullaby for the soil. You glance around the garden, half expecting someone to step out from behind a hedge, laughing, revealing the trick. But there's no one, just vines. Grapevines twisting through the trellises in impossible ways. Some climbing over stone, some growing sideways, some coiled like serpents around wrought item that wasn't there the day before. They seem to breathe with the wind, not in rhythm, but in response. You sit very still. The goblet of red wine now warm at your side. The diary rests in your lap like it's weighing you down intentionally. Another line has surfaced on the page. You don't even have to look for it anymore. It just rises, like ink waking up from sleep. The vines carry the memory, but the roots, those are where the secrets ferment. Your fingers twitch toward the glass of wine again. You haven't drunk from it since the test earlier, when the red hit your ears like a siren. Now it just sits there, quiet but not harmless. Something about it makes your skin feel too thin. You take the sip anyway. It slides down slower than before, and when it settles, it's not in your stomach. It's in your chest, heavy and warm like a stone dropped into still water. The humming grows louder, then a sharp snap somewhere beyond the vines. You turn your head instinctively, and for a moment, you swear you see a woman there. Pale skin, hair like ash, wearing something between a nightgown and a shroud. She stands impossibly still, one hand lightly brushing a vine as though checking for a pulse. You blink. She's gone. The wine has settled now. The warmth spreading from your chest is no longer comforting, it's electric. You feel yourself pulled forward, physically drawn toward the heart of the garden. The trellises seem to shift as you walk, making way, guiding you down a narrow path that wasn't there yesterday. At the end of the path is a stone archway draped in grapes so dark they're almost black. Beneath them hangs a curtain of dried vines braided together. You push through it, and the air changes instantly. The temperature drops, the light dims, and the scent, clove, ash, and iron returns. The space inside is small, circular, and lined with the more of those unlabelled bottles, each sealed with dark red wax. A table stands in the centre, covered with a velvet cloth the colour of old bruises. On it rests a single object, a mask. Not a delicate masquerade piece like the others have worn. This one is heavier, carved from wood, painted with streaks of ochre and crimson. The eyes are wide and hollow. The mouth is a perfect circle, as if mid-scream or mid-song. A woman steps out from the shadows behind you. It's Paola. You weren't supposed to find this room yet, she says, her voice low, cautious. But the view the wine brings who it chooses. You don't apologise, you just look at the mask. What is it? Paola moves slowly toward it, like she's approaching something volatile. It's for the ritual of retelling, she says. Worn only once, by those who've remembered too much and need to let it go. You don't ask what happens to them afterward, and she continues. We drink to remember, but memory corrodes too. When it begins to rot, you must give it shape, or it eats through you. You look around the room, the bottles, the wax, the silence so thick it feels almost solid. And this is where they come? you ask. To rot. Paola doesn't answer directly. She just places a hand on the mask and closes her eyes. This is where we distill memory into story. The difference between madness and myth is only how well it's told. Now here's something grounded to pin all this floating strangeness to. In several Mediterranean folk traditions, particularly in Corsica and rural Sicily, there are stories of women known as cantadora, memory keepers who carried oral histories through songs and tales, often veiled in metaphor to avoid religious persecution. Some were accused of witchcraft, others simply vanished. And while their rituals were mostly vocal, there are scattered references to masks being worn during specific recitations, to protect the story from the self, as one scholar put it. Historians debate whether these women were actual cultic figures or just scapegoats for female power that resisted institutional control. In this room, though, no one debates. The mask exists, the wine hums, and Paola's face has taken on the same expression you've seen on so many others here. Reverence mixed with exhaustion. She turns to you. Do you know the story of the black wine? You shake your head. It was made only once every 7 years, she says, by a circle of 13 women. Each added one ingredient, some ordinary, some less so. They never spoke the full recipe aloud. They never wrote it down. They passed it in whispers, in touch, in dreams. The last known bottle was opened the night Elisabetta disappeared. Your throat tightens. You don't ask how she knows that. Paola continues. We believe she remembered something the wine wanted to keep forgotten, and that it took her. Took her where, you ask us, though you already suspect the answer. She touches the mask again, back into the root. The diary burns faintly against your side, as if in warning. And now your fringe fact, in ancient Phrygia, there are fragmented myths of a female priesthood known only through mentions in the cult of Cybele. These women were said to consume a dark wine fermented with earth, flowers and human ashes, a wine that connected them to the materia memoria, or memory matter. Most scholars consider it symbolic, a poetic way to talk about inherited trauma. But a few have speculated that such a substance could act as a hallucinogen, or worse, an actual repository of collective memory. In the quiet that follows, Paola offers you the mask. You don't take it. Not yet. Instead, you ask, what happens if I wear it before I'm ready? Her expression doesn't change. Then the story remembers you. And somehow that feels like the more dangerous path. You leave the mask behind. For now, but it feels less like leaving and more like deferring a question you'll eventually be forced to answer. Back in your room, the mirror is normal again, the glass clean. Your reflection blinking in time. But when you open the diary, the next line reads, when the mask fits, you won't see yourself anymore. You close it gently. And somewhere beyond the walls, someone is still humming. You wake to the sound of soft rain on tile. Not dramatic rain, not thunderous or biblical, just a so-even patter that seems to fill the entire house with a hush. You lie still for a moment, watching the ceiling, which is painted with a faded mural of vines entwined around faceless women. Their hands are raised in offering, or maybe surrender. It's hard to tell. The paint is flaking like the memory of the artist was too fragile to hold on. You sit up and something crunches under your palm. A single dried grape pressed flat and leathery. It wasn't there last night. You turn it over. One side bears a faint impression, like a coins of fate worn down by centuries of pocket fondling. It almost looks like a seal. You put it on the windowsill and try not to read too much into it. Try, but fail. Your reflection in the mirror is finally behaving. No flickers, no blank-eyed stares, no moisture crawling down the glass. You should be relieved. You're not. You've been here 3 days now, though days feel like a generous way to measure time. The house doesn't follow sunlight the way the outside world does. The meals appear when they're ready, not when the clock says so. Candles burn too slowly or too fast. And no one, not once, has mentioned leaving. You find Lucrezia in the conservatory. She's poring over a heavy ledger, the kind with pages so thick they turn like doors. She doesn't look up as you enter. You've been in the room, she says calmly. You don't deny it. I didn't wear the mask. She smiles faintly. Good. It's not your season yet. You sit beside her, watching her trace a finger down the page. The paper is full of symbols, circles within circles, lines of strange script, small painted stamps of fruit and leaves. Some pages are sticky at the corners, as if wine has soaked in and left a crust. Others have been torn out entirely. "What is this?" you ask. "The Book of Blooming," she replies. "Every wine, every woman, every ritual recorded here, not in name, in mark." She shows you a page with a sigil that looks oddly familiar, a chalice wrapped in what appears to be a serpent. "This one," she says, tapping it lightly, "is for a ritual that hasn't been performed in 37 years. The wine requires 6 lunar cycles to ferment, and a vow of selishness that lasts until the final cork is broken. It's only offered to women whose husbands have died and who have spoken no man's name since." You raise an eyebrow. Sounds specific. "It is," she turns the page. "So are they all?" The pages flip, revealing more sigils. One shaped like an eye with a key in the centre. One like a comb with blood droplets on the teeth. One, a particularly dense one, appears to be a tree with human eyes embedded in the bark. Lucrezia closes the book suddenly. "You've heard the humming?" It's not a question. You nod. She leans back in her chair and exhales. "They always hum when a vow is about to break." You don't ask what vow she means. Maybe it hasn't been made yet. Maybe it was made long ago, and you were born into it. She fixes her gaze on you. "Tonight, you'll sit beside the Inquisitor's wife. That stops your breath mid-inhale. I thought—" You begin, but she interrupts. "She's come to us in secrecy, as many have before her. Her name is Signora Agnesa. You won't address her directly, you'll listen, that's all. You want to say that you've been listening since the moment you arrived, but something about the way she says it, you'll listen, feels different, heavier. Like this time, silence is a form of speech. At dusk, you're led to a smaller salon, one with lattice windows and no fire. The chill in the room has been chased away with burning cloves and sprigs of rosemary. A long table sits in the centre, not circular like before, but a sharp, narrow rectangle, like a blade set for communion. You take your seat. There are only 6 women here tonight, each one cloaked more than usual. Agnesa sits at the far end, her hands folded, gloves on, veil pulled low, but even from a distance you can feel her presence, calm, coiled and terribly aware. Her body hums with restraint. A decanter is placed before her. Unlike the others, this one is made of unpolished clay, stained around the lip. No label, no sigil, just a single red thread tied around the neck. The woman to her right, Rosalia, you think, though she's never introduced, speaks filled. "We offer you remembrance, not as confession, not as plea, but as proof." Agnesa nods once. They pour the wine, deep red, almost purple, thick enough to paint with. It clings to the sides of the glass like oil. The scent rises before the sip does, earthy, dark, laced with something like pomegranate left too long in the sun. Agnesa drinks, just a sip. She closes her eyes, and then she speaks. "My mother was accused when I was 6, she begins. Not of witchcraft, of hysteria. She sang to the vines at night. She walked barefoot in the cellars. She said our house remembered the footsteps of the dead." The others are silent, no gasps, no pity, just listening. "She disappeared one spring. I was told she left, but I found her slipper buried in the vineyard 10 years later, when the soil turned itself. No one ever explained how it got there." She pauses. "I married into the church. They made sure I stayed devout. They made sure I stopped singing, but the vines kept growing." She opens her eyes and looks at no one in particular. Maybe at you. And then the grapes started to weep. You think it's a metaphor, you hope it is, but you also remember the wet mirror, the crying vines, the pulse in the soil. Maybe it's not a metaphor at all. And now for your historical fact. In the early 17th century, several inquisitorial records include strange references to noblewomen found tending to vineyards in secret, often barefoot, often at night. These cases rarely led to trials. They were noted, sometimes punished with silence, seclusion, arranged marriage, or removal from social life, but rarely condemned publicly. Some scholars believe these women were spared because their husbands had influence. Others believe the church was simply afraid of what they couldn't name. There's also a fringe theory that the so-called weeping vine was a symptom of root rot, but others claim the phenomenon was tied to lunar phases and only occurred on soil touched by human bone. Back in the salon, Agnesa finishes her glass. She stands. She bows, not to the room, but to the wine, and then she leaves. Silent as a leaf falling through fog. The room exhales when the door shuts. Lucrezia turns to you. She'll return when the vines sing her name, not before. You're not sure whether she means in dream or in death, but either way you understand, some women come not to remember. They come to be remembered. The clay goblet Agnesa drank from is left behind on the table, a red rim still glistening in the candlelight. No one touches it. No one speaks. It's as though her words have coated the air itself, thick and clinging. You breathe it in, the remnants of secrets spoken too calmly to feel like tragedy and too precisely to be fiction. Something about her story stays lodged in your ribs like a grape seed you forgot to spit out. Lucrezia moves last, standing with a grace that seems built into her bones. She wraps the goblet in a black cloth, folds it twice and carries it away without explanation. The door shuts behind her with a whisper of hinges and a sudden finality. The remaining women disperse with little more than a glance your way, some nodding, some touching your shoulder briefly. But it's not comfort. It's confirmation. You were here. You heard. And now it lives inside you too. You return to your quarters and the house feels different. Heavier. Maybe it's the wine in your blood, or maybe it's the fact that you now know Agnesa, the wife of a man who condemns her kind, has been drinking from forbidden chalices beneath his roof. There's a strange sort of thrill in it. Not joy exactly, but a humming current of rebellion that pulses through your fingertips as you open your door. On your pillow sits a folded napkin. Not silk, not linen. Paper. Coarse, grey, the kind used to wrap bottles. You unfold it carefully. One word, handwritten in thick black ink. Eucharist. You sit down. The word stares up at you like a challenge, or maybe a confession. The next morning, before the sun has properly broken over the rooftops, Lucrezia appears in your doorway. She doesn't knock. She never knocks. "We're going to the vineyard," she says, the one that doesn't exist. You rise, already dressed, as if you were waiting for her. No carriage is summoned, no fanfare, just you, Lucrezia, and a long path that curls beyond the house's garden gate. The road winds down through thickets of olive trees and wild lavender, crunching beneath your boots in a rhythm that matches your heart. "Most of the wines you've tasted," she begins, not bothering with pleasantries, "come from vineyards you'll never find on any map. They exist, certainly, but not in the way cartographers or merchants understand. Some are tended by women who don't know how long they've been alive. Others are kept alive only by remembering." You glance sideways. Remembering what? Pain and purpose. The walk takes longer than you expect. You pass through groves that shimmer with heat despite the early hour, through ruined stone archways too symmetrical to be accidental. Eventually you reach a low hill crowned with a wall of old vines. Not new shoots. These are thick, black-veined, twisted like ropes, clawing into the earth as though holding on for dear life. Or maybe holding something in. "This is the vineyard with no name," Lucrezia says softly. "There's no gate, no signage, just the vines and a silence so deep it presses against your ears like water. The vineyard is in full bloom, yet you hear no birds, no insects. The grapes are massive and nearly black, clustered like heavy jewels. They gleam with morning dew, but the droplets don't seem to evaporate. They cling like tears." Lucrezia kneels and digs gently at the soil with her bare hand. She pulls something up, brushes away the dirt, and reveals a small weathered coin. "They always return," she says, handing it to you. "It's not money. It's a communion token. Ancient, maybe Byzantine. One side bears the profile of a woman, the other a cup. You swallow hard. This vineyard is for sacrament?" She nods. "But not the kind the church recognizes. This land predates it. Women have bled here, buried here, been born here. The roots have taken in more than just rain." You don't ask if she means that literally. You already know. Here's your historical fact of the hour. In the hidden folds of Renaissance Europe, there were records, not official ones, but in private journals and intercepted letters, of something called the feminine Eucharist. Not a parody of the church's rite, but a parallel, a resistance. While the official Eucharist focused on Christ's body and blood, this shadow version was centered on women's cycles, life, and sacrifice. Wine stood not only for blood, but for lineage, for suffering unacknowledged. Bread was sometimes replaced with herbs or honeyed fruits, often symbolic of fertility or grief. And yes, these rites were performed in secret, beneath vineyards, in cellars, or under moonlight. Back in the vineyard, Lucrezia is standing again. "Watch," she says. You follow her gaze as she presses her palm against one of the larger vines. It curls slightly, responding. She hums just a single low note, and in return the vine begins to drip. It takes a second to realize what's happening. From where the vine was cut or broken long ago, a thick dark sap begins to weep out. Too red to be resin, too slow to be dew, it pools into a hollow stone at the base of the plant. "This is the base of the black wine," she says. "Not every harvest bleeds, only the ones with memory." You feel dizzy. The air smells like overripe fruit and something older, something mineral iron-rich. The kind of smell that lingers on the inside of your nose long after it's gone. A small flask is pressed into your hand. She's already collecting the sap. "You'll take this," she says. "When it's full, seal it with breath." "Breath?" "Your own," she replies. "Blow across the mouth. Let the vine know who drank it." And here's your quirky fringe detail. Some pre-Christian rituals across southern Italy involved wines of breath, fermented grape elixirs infused not only with herbs but with human breath, passed from mouth to vessel before sealing. It was believed that this bound the drink to the soul of the drinker, or to the intention behind the ritual. Whispering into a bottle wasn't superstition, it was sacrament. You crouch beside the vine and hold the flask steady beneath the bleeding stem. The sap doesn't pour. It pulses, slow, reluctant, intimate, like it knows you're there. When it's full, you press your lips gently to the mouth of the flask and exhale. The sap quivers once, then stills. Lucrezia nods. Now it knows you. You glance around the vineyard. The silence isn't empty anymore. It's alert, listening. And the diary pressed tight against your chest beneath your shawl warms again. Later, back in your room, you set the flask down beside your pillow. The dried grape from the morning has vanished. In its place sits a small piece of paper. No handwriting this time, just a symbol, a goblet, wrapped in roots. That night, sleep doesn't come, not in the usual way at least. You lie in bed, the flask of sap near your head like a heartbeat you can't silence. And the symbol on the folded paper burns behind your eyelids every time you blink. A goblet wrapped in roots. It's simple, almost crude in its design, and yet it feels more personal than a letter addressed in your own name. You consider throwing it into the fire. You even walk toward the hearth with it in hand, but your fingers won't let go. Instead, you slip the symbol into the diary, between the pages where the ink fades and reappears like a tide, and sit with your back against the cold wall, eyes wide and waiting. Not for sleep, for something else, something you're starting to understand can only find you when you've been cracked open far enough. Eventually, the room dims. Not the light, something deeper. Like the shadows are pulling forward, tugging the edges of the space toward them. You don't fight it. When your vision shifts, you let it. You're not sure when exactly the transition happens, but one minute you're watching candlelight flutter across the ceiling, and the next, you're standing in the vineyard again, except it's not the same vineyard. Or maybe it is, but from a different time or under a different rule of physics. The vines are thicker, darker, swaying despite the stillness of the air. A blood moon hangs over them, low and obscene, casting everything in a copper wash. You take a step. The soil is warm. A woman appears ahead of you, barefoot, cloaked out in a gown of twisted vine and lace. Her face is turned away, but she sings softly. No words, just melody. An echo of the humming you've heard before. As you move toward her, she walks between the vines, and you follow like a child chasing a lantern through the woods. You don't feel afraid, you feel pulled. The path narrows. The vines close in. Finally, you reach a clearing, circular, familiar. A stone table sits at the centre, surrounded by 13 empty chairs. Each is carved from a different material: bone, stone, iron, glass, wood. One of them is yours. You know this as surely as you know your own name. The woman stops beside the table and finally turns to you. It's you. Older, not old, but different. There's a quiet knowing in your eyes that you don't yet possess. Her or your hands are stained red, fingertips dripping. She holds the carved mask you saw days ago, the one with the wide open mouth and eyes like deep wells. "You're not ready," she says in your voice, "but you're close." You look down. In your own hands, you're holding the flask, full again, overflowing. She reaches out and places the mask over your face, and you wake up screaming. It's morning. The scream never leaves your throat, caught like thorns behind your teeth. Your sheets are damp. Not from sweat, at least not only sweat. The flask is still beside your pillow, warm to the touch, but the sap inside is no longer dark. It's turned a soft red, almost rosé, and smells faintly of salt and rosemary. And someone has left another message. Written directly on your mirror this time, in a rust-red smear. Truth tastes like ash if you drink it too early. You wash the words away with shaking hands. Later, after forcing down a breakfast you can't remember eating, you find your way into one of the lesser libraries. A room you haven't visited before. This one is narrow and low-ceilinged, with books stacked in crooked piles and paper scraps shoved between volumes like bookmarks written by ghosts. The shelves creak when you walk past them. The windows are shuttered. Elisabetta is there, reading naturally. She looks up when you enter and smiles as though she's been expecting you. You've seen the table. You nod slowly. Is it real? She closes her book, not gently. As real as memory. You sit across from her. Was that me? It was a version, she says. A projection, perhaps. Or a warning. You study her. Have you seen it? She hesitates. Once. I was offered a seat. I refused it. I'm still paying for that decision. What happens if I sit? She shrugs. No one knows. That's the point. You lean back in the chair, mind racing. Is that what happened to Elisabetta R., the one from the diary? Elisabetta the reader, the current one, grows still. She sat, that's all we know, the rest is speculation. What kind of speculation? She laces her fingers, eyes far away. That she became part of the wine, that her story dissolved into the sap and now sings through the vines. It sounds ridiculous, poetic, terrifying. And yet, now for a documented historical thread. Throughout ancient Rome and into the Middle Ages, women were often associated with cultivating not just vineyards but medicinal herbs, many of which were used in tinctures and wines for healing and spiritual purposes. There are records of wine priestesses, a term found in marginalised Etruscan texts, who were believed to channel ancestral spirits during harvest rituals. These women were said to become the wine, in metaphor or myth, through trance and offering. Scholars dismiss it as folklore, but scholars weren't there when the vines sang. Elisabetta rises and walks to the far shelf, returning with a slim volume wrapped in linen. She places it gently in front of you. The writings of the Watcher, she says, translated from fragments found near Lake Como. She was nameless, but she saw the rituals before they were called rituals. You unwrap the book. It smells old, damp, earthy. Inside, the first page is handwritten in looping script. I watched them pour what could not be named. They did not speak, but the goblet spoke for them. I tasted, and I forgot who I was. Then I remembered who I had been. Beneath that, a single image. A woman holding a wine glass that blooms with flowers instead of liquid. You turn the page, the next is blank, and the next, until the final page where you find one single word in that same looping hand again. You look up. Elisabetta is gone. The room is empty. You didn't hear the door open. You press your hand to the page, feeling the grain of the paper. And when you do, the wine flask on your belt pulses once, like a slow heartbeat. You know what's coming. Tonight, the goblet spins, and someone won't make it out the same. Evening drapes itself over the house like velvet. Soft and weighty, the kind of night that demands silence, even from the floorboards. Outside your window, the vineyard is nearly invisible beneath the moonless sky, a tangle of shadows curling in on themselves. You imagine you can still smell the soil, still hear the soft hum of a woman's voice drifting through the vines. But you know that's impossible. Or, more accurately, you know that kind of impossibility is exactly what this place feeds on. Downstairs, the house is already in motion. The scent of burning herbs coils through the corridors. Mugwort, sage, and something metallic that curls behind your teeth like the aftertaste of fear. You dress in black, not because it's required, but because it feels appropriate. Tonight is not for celebration. Tonight is for widows. Lucrezia meets you at the threshold of the ritual room. She's not wearing a veil this time. Instead, her hair is braided tightly, wound with thorns. Tiny ones, but sharp enough to catch the candlelight. Her gown is matte and heavy, dyed the colour of drying blood. She nods once and hands you a small object. A ring, carved from what looks like petrified wood. For mourning, she says. You don't have to have lost someone to wear it, but it helps. The door creaks open, and you step into a space that feels newly ancient. This isn't the same salon from the first ritual. This room is colder, deeper in the house. The walls are lined with stone instead of wood, and the candles sit in sconces carved with names, dozens of them, etched in the looping scripts of different centuries. You don't recognise any of them, and yet they all feel familiar. The women here are different too, older. Their masks are heavier, more ornate, some made of jet, others from carved bone or dark glass. These aren't the masks of flirtation or secrecy, these are masks of authority, of power. They all wear black. Tonight, you learn, is the ritual of widow's wine. No one speaks as you take your seat. There's no music, just the sound of pouring, the slow glug of wine being decanted into goblets so dark they absorb the light. The wine itself is thicker than anything you've tasted before. It shimmers with a faint iridescence, like oil on water. The scent is pungent, aged roses, clove, and something faintly bitter, like grief dried into powder. Lucrezia begins the rite with a single phrase, spoken not aloud but murmured into her goblet. Per ciò che abbiamo perso, e per ciò che non troveremo mai, for what we've lost, and for what we'll never find. Each woman repeats the phrase before drinking. You raise your goblet. The wine trembles even though your hand is steady. You drink. It doesn't taste like wine. It tastes like memory. Old, sour, decaying. The kind of memory you try not to revisit but find anyway in dreams. You feel your chest tighten, as if someone is pressing their palm hard against your heart. A name surfaces on your tongue, someone you lost, someone you didn't realize you'd buried so deep. The woman beside you, draped in onyx velvet, begins to speak, not to the room, but to the goblet in her hands. I was 13 when he died, she says. He told me the stars were pinpricks in the firmament where the dead peek through. She sips, then continues. I've spent 30 years trying not to look up. Each woman follows. Not confessions, not stories, just offerings. They give their grief to the wine, and in return the wine gives them something. You're not sure what, but their shoulders soften, their spines uncoil, their masks grow lighter, as though the ritual is peeling something off layer by layer. Your turn comes. You don't know what to say, so you say what rises. I lost her in the womb, you whisper. She never had a name, but I still feel her in my hands when I carry water. You drink. The wine is warmer now, as if it recognizes what you've given it. Lucrezia speaks once more. We do not forget our grief, we ferment it, we sweeten it, we bottle it, and then we serve it to the future. It hits you suddenly. The truth behind this ritual is not about erasing sorrow, it's about making it drinkable. Now, here's your historical moment. In some noble families of 15th and 16th century Italy, there are oblique references to dark vintages, wines reserved for widows, often aged in separate barrels, hidden from the public record. These wines were said to be laced with herbs associated with mourning, rue, rosemary, and pennyroyal. But in more obscure letters, some suggest blood was added, not always human, but symbolically tied to the deceased. Whether real or metaphor, these mourning wines became part of death rites far removed from the public church ceremonies. Tonight, you understand, as the ritual winds down, the empty goblets are placed in a circle at the centre of the room. One by one, each woman removes her mask and places it beside her goblet. The unmasking is not a stripping down, it's a claiming. These faces are not weaker without the masks. They are more defined, hardened, etched with the truths they've spoken and the wine they've swallowed. Lucrezia places her mask last. Beneath it, her face is lined, but beautiful and tired. She turns to you. There's another level, she says quietly. Those who have nothing left to mourn. What's there, you ask? Her eyes darken. Vengeance. You don't ask if she's been there. You already know she has. And now the quirky truth. Among lesser-known Venetian legends is the tale of the Vine Widow. A woman whose husband vanished under mysterious circumstances, and who for 30 years poured a single glass of black wine every full moon onto the soil where his body was never found. They say the vines bloomed redder where she wept. They say the wine that came from that ground could make a man see the face of the last woman he betrayed. You wonder what your own wine would show someone, and who might drink it. Later that night, back in your room, you find something on your pillow again. Not a note, not a symbol, a mask, carved from wood painted black with a silver tear on one cheek. It fits perfectly. You don't remember falling asleep with the mask, but you wake with it in your hands, held gently, like an offering, or a burden you've accepted too easily. The silver tear glints in the weak dawn light filtering through your shutters, and for a moment, you can't help but see your own reflection inside that sliver of paint. You hold it up to your face. It's heavier this morning, as if overnight it's absorbed something from you. Grief, maybe, or memory, or intent. You dress quietly and move through the house like a ghost who's memorized the floor plan. The halls echo less now. Maybe they trust you, or maybe you've simply become part of the echo. At breakfast, the table is nearly empty. Only 2 women sit beside the spread of figs, cured meats, and dark bread. One is reading a letter, the other is staring into a goblet of dark liquid, eyes unfocused as if waiting for it to blink first. You choose not to speak to either. You're not sure if words would be welcome here. They rarely are during mornings after rituals. Instead, you wander, through halls you've never noticed, past staircases that curl into stone, until you find a small wooden door half hidden behind a faded tapestry. It creaks open without resistance. Inside, a cellar. Not like the others. No shelves of wine, no rituals or velvet cushions, just crates. Rows of them. All stamped with a single mark. A vineyard crest you don't recognise, flanked by a pair of intertwined female silhouettes. You step forward, brushing away cobwebs. The crates smell of damp wood, clay, and something else. Bitter herbs and dried flowers. A scent that makes your throat ache with nostalgia for something you've never experienced. You pry open the nearest crate. Inside are bottles, unlabelled, wrapped in thick waxed cloth and sealed with a wax crest pressed with the same intertwined silhouettes. And tucked beneath them, papers, letters. You pull one free and unfold it carefully. The ink is brown with age, but legible. We harvest tonight under a sky with no stars. The soil is darker than ever, and the roots hum when we press them. If this vintage fails, the others will know. We won't survive another silence. You set it aside and open it up. Another. This one shorter. Elena says she saw the vines twitch after the last drop of blood. I told her not to say it aloud again. The walls have ears, and so does the wine. You read 10 more, 20, each one a window into something deeper, darker. You recognise names that were only murmurs at previous rituals. Elisabetta, Lucrezia, even Agnesa, her writing precise and sharp-edged. And then you find one that makes your blood freeze. The vineyard has no name because it was never planted. It grew after the burial. We didn't know the soil would answer us. You look up around the cellar, the walls pressing closer than before. You're not afraid, but your breath shortens, because you believe it. You believe every word. You seal the letters back inside their crate and rise slowly, one hand brushing the dust from your skirt. As you leave, you trace the carved emblem on the doorframe with your finger, the twin silhouettes, not mirrored, but dancing. Back upstairs, Lucrezia is waiting in the hallway, not angry, just present. You found it, she says. You don't deny it. Why are they hidden? She leans against the wall, arms crossed. Because sometimes truth ferments into something too potent to serve. We keep it there, bottled, but not forgotten. Is this what happened to Elisabetta R? Lucrezia looks away. She wanted the truth served warm. She drank too soon, or maybe too late. The silence between you is filled with something thick, not tension, anticipation. And now for the historical thread. In several Mediterranean legends, vineyards were believed to grow spontaneously in places of intense emotional trauma. Battlefields, mass graves, places where women wept for their dead without permission. These were called weeping fields, and the wine that came from them was said to taste of sorrow, fury, and occasionally revelation. The church condemned such wines as blasphemous, yet many noble families stored bottles in secret as insurance against forgetting. You follow Lucrezia down the hall to a room you haven't entered before. Inside is a low altar covered in dark cloth. Behind it, shelves filled with sealed scrolls, bones tied with red thread, dried flowers and feathers. This is no parlour. This is an archive. She pulls one scroll from the shelf and lays it before you. The wax seal crumbles under her fingers. Inside, a single phrase repeated 12 times, each in different handwriting. I poured it into her mouth and she remembered the fire. What is this? You ask, barely whispering. A rite that hasn't been performed in 80 years, the Black Communion. You swallow hard. Is that what happened in the unnamed vineyard? It's what ends there, she says. When the roots grow too full, when the memory becomes too much to hold and mar. It must be served or it will spoil. You want to laugh or cry or run, but instead you say, and I'm part of this. Lucrezia smiles. You already were, from the moment you tasted the scarlet. You press your hands to the edge of the altar, grounding yourself. What's in the Black Communion? She looks at you for a long time before answering. Blood, vine, bone, and the last thing a woman ever loved. That answer sits in your chest like a shard of broken glass. Now for your fringe fact. In a nearly forgotten Venetian diary from 1623, a noblewoman writes of a wine served only after childbirth, the midnight goblet. She describes it as tasting of grief and salt. She claims it allowed her to see her daughter's future and her mother's death. She calls it my curse and my cradle. Lucrezia offers you the scroll. You take it. The paper pulses. Later, in your room, you find another token on your pillow. A dried flower, blackened and curled inward. A violet. Tucked beneath it, one line in familiar curling ink. Wear the mask, come to the vineyard, bring the scroll. You don't question who wrote it. The time has come, the moon is waning when you leave your room and the sky stretched thin and starless. The mask rests against your face, its wooden weight grounding and strangely warm. Like it's been waiting to be worn. It doesn't obscure your vision, not exactly, but it filters the world, turns colour for as more muted, sounds more echoing. Everything seems to be happening one breath behind the moment, like time is folding itself in half and inviting you to walk the crease. You move through the house without seeing anyone, not even Lucrezia, not tonight. The scroll is tucked against your ribs, bound in soft black linen, and pulsing faintly like a second heartbeat that knows more than you do. You clutch it tighter each time you descend a staircase, cross another silent corridor, push open a door that shouldn't be unlocked but always is. The garden greets you like an old story you only half remember. The scent of crushed rosemary and old wine hits your nose the moment you pass beneath the arch, and then you see them. 12 women masked, dressed in black, gathered in the shape of a circle, the same shape you dreamed about, the same number of chairs at the table in the vision. They stand silently, waiting for the 13th. You don't speak. You walk to the centre of the circle and bow your head. No one says your name, but they all know it. The unnamed vineyard looms behind them, rows of blackened vines twisting into the night like claws reaching for absolution. No stars hang above, only that sliver of dying moon, pale and bone-thin, like a fingernail that scratched too many secrets into too many walls. From within the circle a woman steps forward. She wears a mask shaped like a bleeding eye, and around her throat is a string of thorns, real ones. They bite into her skin just enough to draw red dots where the points meet flesh. She holds a vessel, not a bottle, a bowl, stone, shallow, and carved with the same symbols you've seen throughout the house. Goblets, vines, women holding hands with ghosts. The scroll, she says, her voice flat and strong. You give it. She unrolls it with care, not reverence. This isn't worship. This is duty. Each of the 12 steps forward and touches the scroll with 2 fingers. As they do, they whisper something. You can't hear the words. You're not meant to. Then the woman with that bleeding eye mask turns to you. Speak. You hesitate. You weren't told what to say, but deep in your gut something unfurls, something instinctive and not entirely yours. For the memory that will not rest, you begin, voice low but steady. For the stories that cling to our teeth like sacrament, for the wine that is not for celebration, for the blood that was never spilled clean. They nod. You continue. For the women we buried twice, once in the soil, once in silence. The masked woman dips the bowl into a jar of the dark sap you collected days ago. She mixes it with something thicker, redder, then raises it high. We drink, she says. Each woman steps forward and sips. When it's your turn, the bowl is heavier than you expected. The liquid inside gleams darkly, almost iridescent. It smells of smoke, salt, and violets left too long in the sun. You drink. It's not a taste. It's a memory. You're standing at a vineyard that doesn't exist on any map, barefoot in the dirt, the hem of your dress wet with dew or blood. You're holding the hand of a woman you don't recognise but love with a certainty that transcends logic. She is dying, or maybe being born. You can't tell the difference. The vines around you whisper in languages not spoken for centuries, names of women who gave their bodies to the soil willingly, who sang to the earth even as it consumed them. You see Elisabetta R. dancing alone, her feet red with crushed grapes, her eyes wild with something too large for her body to contain. You see Agnesa weeping into a chalice she never meant to touch. You see Lucrezia, young, laughing, then screaming, then still. And then you see yourself, pouring the bowl into the earth, feeding the roots. You blink, you're back. The bowl is empty. The circle of women remains still, unmoving, their masks shimmering faintly in the candlelight that seems to have appeared from nowhere. The woman with the thorn necklace lowers her hands. She has seen, she says. The others nod. One by one, they remove their masks. Some you recognise, some you don't. Some you know you will recognise later. In dreams, in mirrors, in the soft lullaby hum of vines at dusk. They speak now, each delivering a single sentence like a torch passed down a line. The wine is the story. The root is the memory. The chalice is the wound. The mask is the face of what we forgot. Each one cuts deeper. The sacrifice is not always death. The altar is not always clean. The prayers are not always kind. And then, the legacy is not the wine we drink. It is the one we pour. You feel your knees soften, not from fear, from weight. History has its own gravity, and it is pressing down on you now, folding you into its soil. Lucrezia steps forward. Her mask is gone. Her face is tired but strong. There is one more truth, she says. She offers you a new goblet. It's different from the others. Bone white, rimmed with ash and etched with that same sigil, a goblet wrapped in roots. This is the widow's offering, she says, the one that is not drunk, the one that is returned. You take it. The wine inside is pale, nearly colourless, but as you hold it, it darkens, slowly, deliberately, like it's remembering itself. By the time it reaches its final hue, it's almost black. You kneel and pour it into the earth. The soil drinks it in instantly as though starving. The vines around you shiver. The ground hums, and beneath your feet you feel something shift, like a breath long held, finally released. Here's your historical parallel. In rural Italian funerary practices, it was once tradition to pour the first and last glass of wine into the ground during women's burials, not just as an offering to the deceased, but as a plea to the earth to return the favour in future harvests. It was said to bind the line. The church outlawed the practice centuries ago, but the vines? They never forgot. The women around you begin to chant, not loudly, not in any language you know. It's like a heartbeat made of breath. The sound wraps around you, thick as silk, anchoring you to this place, this act, this moment. Lucrezia kneels beside you. You've served, she says. And it's not a reward. It's a role. From now on, your wine will not taste the same. You've poured. You've remembered. You've fed the root. And the root remembers you now. You wake before dawn, and for the first time since arriving, the room feels too small. Not physically, no, the walls haven't moved. But something inside you has expanded. And the furniture, the window, even the air feels ill-fitted, as though your bones remember a shape your body hasn't taken yet. The mask rests on the table beside the goblet, both still smeared with soil from the night before. You should clean them. You should return them to Lucrezia, but you don't. You sit instead, unmoving, listening to the silence that now follows you like a shadow. Not absence, but aftermath. The scroll is gone. You don't remember where it ended up. Maybe Lucrezia took it. Maybe it dissolved like it had served its purpose and vanished into the folds of the night. The memory of the ritual is already fading. Not the images, but the feeling, the taste, the impossible hum of the roots under your feet. You try to call it back, but it only comes in flashes. Silver masks, red wine in black bowls, the shiver of the earth. When you make your way downstairs, the house is hushed in a different way. It's not reverent anymore. It's waiting. The women you pass don't smile, don't nod. Some don't even look at you. A few glance at the ring on your finger, the one Lucrezia gave you for mourning, and then quickly away, as though it confirms something they hoped wasn't true. At the base of the stairs, a servant you've never seen before stops you. Young, pale, eyes like dull glass. "She's waiting in the cellar," he says. "No name, no title. You don't ask who she is, you just go, 'The cellar is not the one you found before. This one is older, colder, cut from stone that sweats even when the rest of the house swelters.' You walk slowly, fingers trailing the wall, and each time you pass a torch, the shadows on the wall seem to move against the light instead of with it. At the far end there's a wooden door. Carved into its centre is a symbol you've now seen a dozen times but never truly understood. A tongue inside a chalice, the tip curled like a serpent. Beneath it, a single word etched in Latin. Loquela. Speech. You push the door open and step inside. The room is small, a table, 2 chairs, a single candle burning in the centre. And seated across from the empty chair is Lucrezia. She's not dressed in black today. She wears red, the same shade as the first wine you tasted, the one that struck your ears like bell and left your mouth numb. Her hair is down. There are dark circles under her eyes. "You're ready," she says. "You don't ask for what. You sit." She produces a bottle from beneath the table. Unlike the others, it's clear. You can see the wine inside, dark as ink, with flecks of gold suspended in it like glittering sediment. When she uncorks it, the scent fills the room instantly. Not sweet, not bitter. Familiar. Like the breath of someone who once leaned close to tell you a secret and never finished it. "We call it the listener's vintage," Lucrezia says. "It's not meant for everyone, only those who've heard more than they should." You raise your eyebrows slightly. That doesn't narrow it down in this house. She smiles, tired. "True, but most women here, you remember." She pours 2 glasses. One she sets in front of you. The other she doesn't touch. "I won't drink it," she says. "Not again." You pick up the glass. "Is this the one that killed her?" "Elisabetta?" she asks. You nod. "No," she replies. "She drank something older. This wine doesn't kill, it exposes." You stare into it. The gold flecks float lazily, like they're waiting for a question. "What will I see?" Lucrezia leans forward, her fingers steepled. "Not see. Hear." You sip, and suddenly the cellar is gone. You are standing in the middle of the vineyard, only now it's winter. The vines are bare, skeletal, the soil is frozen, and the wind carries voices, hundreds of them, thousands, some whisper, some sob, some scream. You hear your name over and over again, spoken in tones you've never used, in languages you've never learned, and beneath all of it, one voice louder than the rest. A man's, not cruel, but cold. "You shouldn't have opened it," he says. You turn, but he isn't there. Then, a whisper behind your ear. You've made yourself into a chalice, and just as quickly you're back. The cellar returns, the candle flickers, you're sweating, trembling, but not afraid. Lucrezia watches you closely. "What did you hear?" You think for a moment before answering. "A warning," she nods. "That's what the wine is for, not everyone listens." You stare at the half-empty glass. The gold flecks no longer float. They have sunk to the bottom like dead fireflies. Now here's a grounded historical thread for your mind to grab onto. In the 17th century, Jesuit reports mention heretical wines, not a term for bad vintages, but for secret batches used in whispered rituals. The reports suggest some women claimed the wine let them hear the voices of those buried unjustly. While the church dismissed these as hallucinations, symptoms of melancholy or madness, several confiscated bottles disappeared from official records. Some even made their way into private collections where curious priests drank them, and later reported vivid dreams and unexplainable knowledge. Back in the cellar, Lucrezia reaches into her cloak and removes a small item. A carved tongue, made of bone, threaded onto a thin silver chain. "For the listener," she says. You take it. The bone is smooth and cool. It's not jewellery, she warns. It's a key, but only if you're silent when it matters. What does it open? She tilts her head. You'll know, or you won't. That's the risk. You stand to leave, and she touches your arm once. You're approaching the deep root now. Be careful where you step. Some memories are still raw. As you ascend the stairs, the necklace tucked under your collar, you feel something shift under your foot. Just a tremor. but enough to make you stop. And behind you, just for a moment, you swear you hear footsteps following. But when you turn, the hall is empty. That night, the mask lies beside your pillow again. And in the centre of your mirror, a single word has appeared in breath fog. Sure. The mask doesn't move from the table. Not when the candle gutters out. Not when your breath fogs the mirror again. Not even when the temperature in the room dips low enough to draw goosebumps across your skin. It just sits there, heavy and waiting, its single silver tear glinting in the dark like a held-back confession. You lie awake beside it, eyes wide, staring at the ceiling until the shadows above begin to twist. Not into monsters, into vines, the same ones from the vineyard. Only now they crawl. You don't remember falling asleep, but the dream begins exactly where it left off, the vineyard. This time it's spring. The air smells of blooming lavender and rotting citrus. The vines are thicker than ever, and in the spaces between the rows there are things half buried. Cloth, bone, teeth. You don't ask questions in the dream, you never do, you simply walk the path the wine has laid out for you. There's a table at the centre again, but this one is round. No stone, just old wood, twisted and warped. A game is laid out atop it. 12 goblets, one in front of each chair. In the centre, a spinning stem. You know this game, or rather your body does. Your hands move toward the goblet before your mind catches up. A woman across the table leans forward and spins the stair. It whirls, fast, humming. You don't recognise her face, but you know her eyes. You've seen them in the mirror, maybe in your own. The goblet lands on you. She smiles. Truth or dare? You blink. What? Her voice is like crushed velvet. That's the game. The oldest one. You glance down. The wine in your goblet has turned cloudy, swirling like smoke trapped in water. Truth, you say. She tilts her head. What did your mother forget to tell you? You feel it before you hear it. A flood behind your ribs. An answer not just yours, one given to you by blood and silence and inheritance. She forgot to say goodbye, you whisper. The goblet glows faintly. Another sin, another woman. Dare, she says. Pour your wine into the earth, the first says, and don't look away when it answers. She does. The soil drinks it up, and immediately a scream splits the air. No mouth screams it. It just is. You wake up gasping, heart galloping. Your room is pitch black. The candle's been extinguished, and beside your bed the goblet you drank from days ago is full again. You don't touch it. Later that day you find the others gathered in the eastern salon, the one rarely used, with long windows and pale tapestries. The mood is different. No incense, no ritual cloth, just the buzz of something in the air. Anticipation. A woman stands at the front of the room with a bottle in each hand. This is the ritual of the spinning goblet, she announces. Her voice is cheerful in a way that feels off, like a game show host who knows the prize is poison. Lucrezia enters last. She gives you a small nod but says nothing. The table is circular, just like the one from your dream. 13 chairs, you take your seat third from the left. The woman leading the right, Isadora, someone says, places the bottles in the centre. One red, one gold, one so clear it looks like water but smells of citrus and smoke. The game is simple, Isadora says. The goblet spins. When it lands on you, you choose truth or dare. You look around. The women seem amused. Nervous, yes, but not terrified. Like they've done this before and learned to carry what it gave them. The goblet spins. It lands on a woman in a bronze silk gown. Truth, she says. Isadora grins. What have you hidden beneath your bed since the night of your second rite? There's a beat. Then, my mother's ring, the woman says. She never made it through the last round. I took it off her body before the fire. No one gasps. The goblet spins again. Dare. Tell us the name of the one you betrayed to be here. Another woman chokes on her wine, but the player answers. Lucia, my sister. No one laughs, no one scolds. The goblet spins again and lands on you. Everyone turns. Isadora raises an eyebrow. Truth or dare? You hesitate. Truth, you say, because it feels safer. Her smile fades slightly, replaced by something more serious. She tilts her head. What is the one thing you hope is a lie? Your mouth is dry. The goblet in front of you pulses once. You don't want to answer, but you do. That we're alone down there, you say softly. In the cellar, in the vineyard. That it's only memory. Silence. Then a few women nod. The goblet spins again. More truths. More dares. Each one slicing a little deeper. Each answer less performative than the last. No one's here for fun. This is extraction. This is the vines getting what they're owed. Now, for a historical shadow to this game, in certain noble salons of 17th century France and Italy, secret societies of women used games as a way to vet each other's loyalty. The goblet game, as referenced in a few scattered letters, was a version of truth or consequence, and often ended in expulsion, or worse, if a participant lied. Some dares involved public disgrace, others required silence. A few demanded confessions to crimes the players hadn't even committed, yet. And a fringe claim, one such society passed along the role of ritual poisoner through this very game. The goblet didn't just spin, it chose. Back in the room, the game ends not with applause, but with silence. Isadora lifts the clear bottle. This wine is the final question. Drink, and you accept the memory. Refuse, and you forget the night. One by one, the women drink. When it's your turn, you lift the glass. It's light, smells like rain, tastes like dust. And for one long moment, you remember your mother's voice. Not her words, just the tone, the one she used when she whispered stories to you as a child. The stories she said weren't real, except they were. You drink, and the memory settles in your spine like a second skeleton. That night, the mirror stays blank, but the goblet spins on your dresser, even though no one touches it. The goblet continues spinning long after you've stopped watching it. At first, you think it's your imagination, that your eyes are so accustomed to movement in this house that they fill it in even when nothing stirs. But no, it spins, slowly, methodically, not on its base, but in place like a needle seeking north. It doesn't stop when you reach out, it doesn't wobble, it just continues. The air around it hums faintly, the same note you've heard in the vineyard, in the cellar, in your dreams. When it finally stops, it points not at the door or the mirror, or even the mask that's now permanently seated on your vanity like a guest who overstayed their welcome. It points at you, directly, centre of your chest. You don't touch it. The next day, the sky outside is the colour of old paper, soft grey, speckled with gulls circling high and quiet. The women are restless. You can feel it in their movements, in the way they grip their shawls tighter, in the sharp glances they cast down every hallway. Something is building, something no one wants to name. You find Lucrezia in the greenhouse, where the rosemary has grown too wild to tame, and the air is thick with basil, mint, and something sharp and resinous. She's pruning an unfamiliar plant, its leaves shaped like arrowheads, its blossoms are bruised purple. They are worried, you say. She doesn't turn. They should be. You step closer. About what? She snips a blossom. It falls into her basket like a drop of ink into water. About her, she says. The church has sent an observer. You feel it before she finishes the sentence, a cold knot right beneath your ribs. A man? No, a wife. They think that makes her invisible, but she's the most dangerous kind. You nod slowly. She's not new. No, she's been here before, under another name, another veil. You look out across the vineyard. What does she want? Lucrezia meets your eyes finally, and hers are colder than you've ever seen them. She wants to end it. And here's your dose of history to ground the fog. In the latter half of the 1600s, it became increasingly common for inquisitorial agents to use noblewomen, wives, widows, even nuns, as information gatherers. Their presence was less threatening. They were invited into salons, rituals, even sickbeds. Most people assumed they had no power. That was the point. These women returned with names, letters, scents, sometimes even recipes. And yes, many were spies. Some were also converts. Some were once part of what they now sought to destroy. Back in the house, a letter is waiting for you on your bed. Unsealed, written in perfect controlled script. You are invited to a private Eucharistic reflection, hosted this evening by Signora Allegra Day. No title, no seal, but the paper smells faintly of myrrh and lemon, a blend not used in this house. You arrive at the parlour just past dusk. The fire is low, flickering blue, the way it sometimes does when someone has dropped the wrong herb onto it. Or the right one. Allegra is seated near the hearth, cloaked in pale grey, a book resting on her lap. "You came," she says without looking up. You remain standing. "You requested." She smiles faintly. "Yes, I did." There are 2 goblets on the table. Neither matches any you've seen before. They are clear of a glass, with etched rims, plain, clean. "The truth is simple," she says. "There is rot in this house." You stay silent. It wraps itself in tradition, in ritual, in secrecy, but rot is rot, and someone needs to cut it out. Her voice is calm, too calm. "What is it you think we do here?" you ask. She lifts the goblet. Doesn't drink, just cradles it. "You romanticize blood," she says. "You ferment grief. You call it legacy. I call it pathology. You consider leaving." But then she says, "I know about Elisabetta." That makes you sit down. "I know what happened to her," she says. "I know what she drank. I know what she saw. And yet," you murmur, "you stayed." She doesn't blink. "Because I know the cost of ignorance. I also know that some memories aren't meant to be shared. They are meant to be buried." You want to ask how many women she's buried. Instead, you reach for the goblet. She watches, still as stone. You sip. The wine tastes wrong, clean, sterile. No layers, no memory, just alcohol and citrus. "What is this?" "The sanctioned version," she replies. "The one the church permits. Flavour without depth, story without sin." You swallow. It burns, but not in the way it should. "Why invite me?" "Because I see the weight in your shoulders," she says. "You've taken on something that cannot be carried forever. This is your choice. You could end it. Tell them where the cellar is. Tell them about the scrolls, about the masks. Why would I?" She leans forward. "Because eventually someone will, and when that happens, it's better to be the first than the forgotten." There's a pause, and then you laugh. Not loud, not cruel, just tired. "You think this place will fall because someone writes it down?" Her smile fades. "It's not ink that keeps us hidden," you say. "It's root." And then, for the first time, you see it in her eyes. The flicker of memory, of guilt, of remembrance. She was one of them, once, and she forgot. Now here's your fringe historical footnote. Some letters from female monastics in the 18th century describe a pale communion offered during times of doubt. A bland, uninspired wine, no herbs, no blood, no resonance, served to those deemed emotionally unstable or dangerously creative. It was a ritual of erasure, designed not to nourish, but to flatten. Allegra offers no more words, only a nod. You leave her there in that parlour of silence, and outside the vines shiver, sensing the rot. Later that night the goblet on your dresser spins again, but this time when it stops, it doesn't point at you. It points at the door, and you understand. Someone has crossed the threshold, and it isn't for wine. It's for fire. The fire starts small, so small you almost miss it. Just a thin ribbon of smoke curling up past the window frame, not enough to raise alarm, not yet. The women are still moving through the house as if it's any other morning. Soft footsteps, distant whispers, goblets clinking gently in hallways. But the smell, that's the first real sign. So the sweet smoke of incense or herbs or damp firewood. This is something sharper, acrid, new. You rise from your bed, heart already tight, as if the air itself has thickened. Outside your window there's a plume thin but unmistakable, rising near the eastern edge of the vineyard, the part no one walks through, the part Lucrezia once called too full. You throw on your shawl, not bothering to fasten it. The hallway outside is empty, but not silent. Somewhere a door slams. Someone's running, not you, not yet. You're moving slowly, listening. The silence has changed its pitch. Downstairs, the scent is worse. Smoke mingled with something organic. You recognise it, though you wish you didn't. Burned wine. The front door is open. Outside, a small crowd is already gathering near the trees. Black smoke smears across the pale sky like ink spilled in water. As you approach, someone steps back to let you through. It's Isadora, her face streaked with soot, jaw clenched tight. "It's the old storage house," she says. "The one beyond the north trellis." You didn't know there was a storage house, which means someone told. You follow her gaze and see it, half collapsed already, flames licking at the dry wood like it's been waiting centuries to burn. The air pulses with heat, and beneath it, a smell you can't name. Not flesh, not wood, memory maybe, evaporating. Lucrezia stands near the edge of the vines, face pale, eyes locked on the blaze. Her hands are clenched at her sides, but she doesn't move to stop it. She knows there's no point. When you reach her, she doesn't look at you. "We kept the older vintages there," she says, "the ones we hadn't decoded yet. Bottles that hummed, scrolls written in ash." You nod. You don't ask if Allegra did this. You already know. "She didn't light it herself," Lucrezia says quietly as if reading your thoughts. "She pointed. That was enough." Behind you, someone whispers a name, not hers, yours. You turn, it's Paola. She's holding something in her hands, something wrapped in silk and already damp with ash. "They saved this," she says, voice flat, before it spread. She hands it to you. You unwrap it slowly, fingers trembling, a bottle, black glass, still sealed. The wax at the top is cracked but not broken. Etched into the side is a single sigil, a tongue pierced by a thorn. Lucrezia sees it and lets out a breath that sounds too close to a sob. "The wine of speaking," she murmurs. "We thought it was lost." You stare down at it, heart pounding. The bottle hums faintly, not audibly, just under your skin. "We can't drink it here," Lucrezia says. "Not now, it would be too loud." You look up at the burning building, you understand. Later, back inside, the women gather in the western parlour, one of the few rooms untouched by ritual. The curtains are drawn, the wine untouched. There's no fire in the hearth. Allegra is not here. Lucrezia stands before them silent. When she finally speaks, her voice is thin and hard. "This was a warning," she says. "And a loss, but not the end." Some women nod, others weep. A few clutch their goblets as if holding on to the last memory that still belongs to them. You sit in the corner, the bottle still in your lap. And now your historical tether. In scattered pre-Christian European lore, especially in the Balkans, there are references to speaking wines. These were not meant to be consumed regularly, or even enjoyed. They were offerings, activated only in dire moments. They were said to carry the voices of women who had been silenced, burned, buried, exiled. The wine didn't speak in words. It sang, or screamed, or whispered things you weren't supposed to survive hearing. The church declared these wines demonic, unsurprisingly. Lucrezia crosses the room and kneels beside you. Her hand closes gently over yours. "It's time," she says. "We need the truth, all of it." You rise. Together, you and Lucrezia move through the back halls, past unused staircases and shuttered doors. Eventually, you reach the mirror room, the one that had fogged before, that once wept a tear down its surface. Tonight, it waits. Lucrezia lights a single candle and places it in front of the mirror. You place the bottle beside it. "No mask," she says. You nod. You remove it. Your face feels exposed in a way that has nothing to do with skin. The bottle is uncorked. The scent is immediate. Iron, salt, crushed violets, and something else, sharp and hot, like lightning in your throat. Lucrezia pours a single glass. Not for herself. For you. You lift it. You don't drink, you listen. At first, nothing. Then a breath. Not yours. Then a whisper. A voice that could be yours. Could be your mother's. Could be someone long dead. The words come in waves, barely intelligible. She tried to speak before they sealed her. And the wine will not forget. The part her name was taken. We are what remains. You lower the glass. Your ears ring. Your hands shake. In the mirror, your reflection is watching you, but not copying you. It lifts its goblet and drinks. Your stomach lurches. Your reflection opens its mouth and sings, not a song with melody, a scream made of names, hundreds, thousands, all women, all lost. Lucrezia grips your arm as the mirror rattles in its frame. Then silence. You gasp. The mirror returns to normal. Your reflection moves in sync again. The wine in your goblet is still full, but now it tastes like your own tongue. Lucrezia pulls you close. The bottle must be sealed, she says. Now. Before it forgets again. You press the cork in with both hands, the hum stops. Now your fringe fact, j'adore. Some texts refer to bottles sealed with breath and regret. Wines meant to be buried, not consumed. But every few generations someone opens one. The ones who survive never speak. The ones who don't, their names appear eventually in places they never lived. Back in your room, the goblet is gone. In its place, a single grape, still wet. Wrapped in your own handwriting, though you don't remember writing it, she is still inside. You hold the grape in your palm for a long time. It's warm, still wet, still breathing somehow, like it was picked just moments before. Your handwriting, curling around it on the paper ribbon, tight and deliberate, feels like a message sent backward through time. You know you didn't write it, at least not consciously, but your hand did. Your ink, your rhythm. She's still inside. You glance around the room. Nothing else has moved. The mask is where you left it. The bottle of speaking wine sealed and wrapped tightly in silk, placed now in the wardrobe beneath your cloaks. You haven't told anyone you heard names. You haven't said a single one aloud. You're afraid of what will happen if you do. The grape feels heavier than it should. Not just physically, but with implication. You try to set it down. Your fingers won't obey. Eventually you eat it. You don't know why. Maybe because part of you believes that if something is alive and inside, it should return to where it belongs. The skin splits between your teeth with a soft pop. The taste isn't sweet. It's not wine-like, not even fruity. It's bitter, earthy and cold, as if the grape was soaked in cellar air and memories long since buried. You swallow it whole, and then the heat starts, not in your throat or your stomach, but behind your eyes. You blink, once, twice, and the room shifts, no longer yours, no longer a room at all. You're standing in the vineyard again, but this time it's blooming in the reverse. Grapes shrivel into buds, vines untwist, roots pull themselves free from the soil and shiver in the open air. The moon hangs upside down. Women walk backward. One of them is you. You call out, no one hears you. Then one woman turns. She doesn't look like you, but you recognize her. Elisabetta. She walks forward as the world collapses in reverse behind her. Her mouth doesn't move, but her voice fills your chest. She is still inside. You fall, or wake, or both. The floor of your room is hard, cold. You must have hit it when you collapsed. Your head thrums, and your mouth tastes like iron and earth. You roll over and find that you're no longer alone. At the foot of your bed sits the novice, the girl you were told to watch weeks ago, though no one's spoken of her since. 15, maybe 16 now. Barefoot, dressed in white. Her eyes are wide, empty, but she's holding something, a goblet, no markings, no sigils, just smooth black glass, filled to the brim with a wine so dark it might be ink. Drink, she says. Her voice isn't hers. You sit up slowly. What is that? She tilts her head. It's her. Elisabetta. She doesn't answer. Instead, she steps forward and offers you the goblet. She's still inside, the girl repeats. She needs to come out. You take the goblet. It's freezing in your hands. Then she walks away. No sound, no footsteps. Just vanishes into the next room, the door clicking shut behind her. You hold the glass for hours. You don't drink, you don't sleep. The wine never spills, never sloshes. It waits. In the morning the goblet is gone, but the weight remains in your chest. Later that day the women gather in the atrium. The walls are draped with heavy cloth, blocking all light. A single candle flickers in the centre. You find your place among them, though no one summoned you. You just know. Lucrezia speaks. We've been visited, she says. Not by fire, but by memory. Something has returned. She doesn't look at you, but everyone else does. You lower your eyes. What does she want? Someone asks. Lucrezia hesitates. To finish what she started. The circle tightens. Women shift uncomfortably in their chairs. Someone whispers, the last time someone tried to finish it, we lost 3. Lucrezia nods. I remember. Now for your grounded detail. In the historical records of secret female societies across Renaissance Europe, there are occasional references to incomplete vintages, rituals that were interrupted, failed, or intentionally abandoned due to loss, betrayal, or intervention. The stories vary, but the results don't. The women involved were either silenced, disappeared, or, rarely, marked by their own sisters for containment. These rituals were believed to leave behind spiritual residue, or what some called unfinished wine. the essence of a person still present in the process, alive, in the liquid. Back in the circle, Lucrezia turns to you. You've been marked, she says. You don't argue. She's chosen you, she continues. Or rather, she's reached for you because your memory was soft enough to receive her. You speak at last. She's not angry. Of course not, Lucrezia says. She's unfinished. The next hours unfold slowly, quietly. A table is brought into the centre of the room. Not an altar, not a shrine, just a surface. Upon it, a bottle is placed. Not the speaking wine, something new. Lucrezia explains. This is the last vintage Elisabetta touched before she vanished. It was sealed. We never opened it. We feared it was unstable, unbalanced. She named it Petra Rossa, the red stone. She pauses. She believed it was the anchor, the memory that would hold the others in place, the final note in the song, but she disappeared before she could pour it. You step forward. You don't ask permission. The cork yields under your hand with a faint sigh. Like breath held for too long. You pour one glass, only one. You raise it to your lips. It smells of old fruit, black tea, dried rose petals, and something sharp. Something like longing. You drink, and the room disappears. Now you're in her dream. You see Elisabetta standing before a wall of mirrors. Each shows a different version of her, laughing, screaming, covered in dirt, bathing in wine, cutting her own hair with a knife. One version steps forward, turns into you, and speaks. You must finish it. Finish what? The telling. A mirror behind her shatters, another one forms. This one shows Allegra, drenched in rain, kneeling in the vineyard with her hands in the soil. She's crying. Even she remembers. You reach out. You touch the mirror. And you're back. The women are staring, the wine is gone, the bottle is empty. Lucrezia walks to you, gently places a hand on your shoulder. She's left you now. You're not sure if that's true, but the weight in your chest is gone. Now here's your quirky fact. There is a belief among some fringe winemakers in Europe that the final vintage a person drinks near death imprints upon their body, leaving behind a unique pure taste. Some claim that a skilled taster can know your final thoughts by sipping what you last sipped. Whether myth or science, no one agrees, but the concept of memory taste is real, and it lingers in wine folklore to this day. That night you find a letter tucked into your pillowcase. It's unsigned. Inside, one word. Grazie. The note doesn't smell like the others. No violet, no ash, no wine-stained edges or crushed rosemary oils. Just paper, clean, crisp, plain, and yet when you hold it, it feels warm, as though someone had clutched it for too long before placing it beneath your pillow. Grazie. The word swells in your chest in a way no grand ritual ever has. Not because it's final, but because it isn't. Thank you. A door left ajar, a thread not severed, only passed. You place the note inside the diary without a second thought. It fits too perfectly, sliding into the crease between the pages like it was meant to be there all along. You pause, then flip through, wondering if anything new has surfaced. There, ink rising like breath-fogging glass. Where we are remembered, we remain. You sit with that for a while. Later, after the midday sun has begun its lazy descent, casting long shadows across the halls, you find yourself at the northern wing of the house where few ever wander. It's a colder part of the estate. The windows are higher, the furniture older, the walls lined with oil portraits so aged they've become anonymous. Women painted in profile, faces pale, expressions unreadable. Each wears a token, something just like yours. A ring, a mask, a goblet, a scroll, and then, tucked into the far wall, a frame without a portrait, only an empty canvas. The brass plate below reads, Elisabetta R. Date unknown. There's no frame like it anywhere else, and the absence feels louder than the presence ever could have. You stare at it long enough that you almost miss the whisper, she was my cousin. You turn slowly. The voice belongs to a woman seated nearby in a small velvet armchair. You don't know her name, but her face is familiar. Sharp lines, silver hair braided tight against her scalp, eyes the colour of dark tea. She continues without waiting for your question. Elisabetta was the one who asked the wrong question at the right time, she says. Or maybe it was the right question at the wrong time. Hard to say. What did she ask? You whisper. The woman leans back. She asked where the memory went after the wine was poured. Not the memory in our minds. The one in the wine. She said, if it holds our grief, our longing, our guilt, then where does it go when we drink it? Does it die, or does it take root in us? You're silent, then. And what did they say? She smiles softly. Nothing. That was the problem. You sit beside her, she continues. She kept asking, she made new blends, experimented. Some say she added blood, others say tears. There were whispers that she found a way to trap not just memory, but intention. Intention? She thought wine could be more than memory, that it could act, that it could do. You exhale. What happened to her? The woman shrugs. Some say she poured her own essence into the bottle, others say she wandered into the roots and never came back. Some think she was silenced. But she's still inside. The woman tilts her head. Maybe. She hands you a small envelope, sealed with red wax in the shape of a spiral. She left this, said someone would need it eventually. You take it and stand, your palms damp. Later, back in your room, you break the seal. Inside is a single page written in a hurried hand. If you are reading this, I have passed into the vine. The ritual was not a failure. It was an opening. But it needs a witness, one who can carry it forward without drowning. If that's you, then go where the soil bleeds. Below, a crude map. Not the vineyard you know, but a spiral path through the trees, ending in a dot marked only with one word. Radis. The route. You wait until sunset. You follow the map. The path is almost too easy to find, as if it's been walked by someone else only recently. The underbrush gives way for you, the branches don't snag your cloak, and the silence is gentle, not heavy. At the end of the spiral, nestled in a ring of old stones and vines so thick they resemble rope, is a hollow in the ground. A cellar door, but older. No hinges, just a slab of stone. You push. It gives way like breath escaping a tight throat. Below is darkness, but you're not afraid. You descend. It's cooler here. Earth-scented, damp. Candles line the walls, some lit, some melted down to nothing. No one has been here in years, and yet the air is warm. At the centre of the room, a single table. Upon it, a diary. Not yours, but its twin. You open it. The handwriting is hers. I recorded everything, every blend, every ritual, every voice. I was wrong to keep it hidden. If you found this, then you are the next vine. You are the vessel now, not to carry grief, but to carry the truth. A whisper echoes through the room. You were always meant to pour. You don't know if it's your mind or the stone speaking, but the moment you hear it, the walls shift. A low rumble. You look up. Roots, thick, black, pulsing, they descend from the ceiling, curling slowly, reaching not toward you, but toward the book. You back away, but not in fear, in awe. They touch the cover, and the diary begins to hum. Here's your historical anchor. In rare accounts from secret apothecaries of Renaissance Italy, there are tales of living grimoires, books believed to be animated by their contents, breathing when opened, resonating when read aloud. Many were burned, some were buried, but one record suggests that a root-wrapped ledger was kept beneath a vineyard hidden by a woman named Elisabetta. And now, you found it. The root doesn't want to devour it, it wants to absorb it. You watch as the pages crinkle and dissolve, melting into the root system as though being drawn home. The book vanishes, but the words, they don't. They settle into your body. You don't have to memorize, you remember. You step back into the twilight, your hands empty, your mind full. Back in your room, a final entry has appeared in your diary. Now that you've heard me, speak, but not in words, in wine. You close the book. The bottle beside your bed rattles, and something inside it begins to bloom. You wake to the sound of something unfurling. It's not loud, not violent, more like the soft release of a tightly wound secret. A sigh made physical. When your eyes open, you don't recognize the room at first. Not because it's changed, but because you have. You see everything differently now. The wine-stained floorboards beneath your bed are no longer just marks of careless pouring. They're map lines, memory trails. The mask beside your pillow no longer looks like protection. It looks like permission. The bottle hums again, a soft, low vibration that resonates against the wood of the table. pulsing with an internal rhythm. Not random, not chaotic, a heartbeat. You lean in, eyes narrowed, and realise something is inside the bottle, not just liquid, not just memory. A bloom, not quite a flower, more like a cluster of veins, root-like tendrils coiled in a tight spiral at the bottom, slowly expanding. It's alive. You don't touch it. You leave the room instead, moving quickly down the hallway as if walking away from your own pulse. You need air, and not the perfumed air of the upper halls. Real air. Vineyard air. You slip through the back entrance, through the herb garden, past the old iron trellis, until the soil underfoot is soft and untamed. The vines are breathing again. You swear you can feel it. Their expansion, their contraction. Some would say it's wind. You know better now. You follow the same spiral path from the night before, retracing your steps to the stone cellar door. But when you reach it, something's changed. It's gone, not hidden. Gone. The spiral ends in an empty patch of dirt overgrown with moss and wild mint. No stone, no stairs, no hollow. You kneel and press your palm to the ground. It's warm, like breath. The diary, the book, the room, you remember all of it. But the land has already healed. Or perhaps it only opened for you once and never again. So you speak, not loud, just under your breath. Elisabetta, I heard you. I saw the mirrors. No answer. But the vines behind you rustle once, like a nod. And then, far off, so distant you almost convince yourself you imagined it. A bell. One chime, then another. Not the ritual bell from the house, the chapel bell. You didn't know it still rang. You run. Across the vineyard, through the arched corridor lined with ghost vines, up the mossy path that leads to the small way. Crumbling chapel no one speaks of anymore. It's barely standing. Walls cracked, roof sunken in, but the bell hangs in its tower like a stubborn relic. Inside you find Allegra. She's kneeling, alone, facing the broken altar, her back to you. She doesn't flinch when you enter. I rang it, she says. Thought you'd come? You remain still. What do you want? She laughs softly. What I've always wanted. To unearth the truth before it's too late. You tried to burn it. She turns. No, I tried to contain it. You step forward. By fire. By silence. Fire was a message. The only language some of them understand. You stare at her. She's not afraid. Then tell me, you say, why the vines still bloom. She closes her eyes. Because she never left. Elisabetta? She nods. I was there, she says. At her last rite. I poured with her. But I refused the final sip. I thought I could walk away clean. But you didn't. I dream of her hands, she whispers, every night, gripping the chalice, reaching into the root, asking me to finish it. You sit across from her on the cold stone floor, so let's finish it. She opens her eyes. Now here's your deep-rooted historical note. In a lost tradition whispered of in Sicilian mountain villages, some women took sacred vows not of chastity or silence, but of witnessing. They were trained from childhood to record death rites, birth wails, betrayals and sacred acts, all in wine, not ink. Wine poured and stored in ritual vessels. These women were feared, desired, hunted. Some say their wine could conjure not memories but realities. Forgotten pasts, alternate futures, or, if poured at the right moment, redemption. Allegra pulls something from beneath her cloak, a small vial. Inside, wine the colour of dried blood and crushed figs. This is all that remains of her essence, and she says, the last physical memory. I couldn't destroy it. You take it gently, it vibrates. She gave this to you. No, Allegra whispers. She poured it into the soil. But the vines didn't take it. They pushed it back. It was too soon, too full. You look at the altar. You know what to do. Together, you clear the broken stone, revealing a shallow basin at its centre, one you'd never noticed before. Carved into its rim, the chalice wrapped in thorns. Beneath it in Latin, quae memoriae non sufficit in radicibus manet. What memory cannot hold, the root remembers. You uncork the vial. The scent floods the chapel instantly. Wine, yes, but richer, older, almost metallic. There's an edge of something holy and profane wrapped together, like communion with a curse. You pour it slowly into the basin. The wine swirls. It doesn't soak. It glows. and then the walls breathe, not figuratively. The cracked plaster pulses once, as if the chapel itself were exhaling. A breeze picks up from nowhere. Dust swirls. And from behind the altar a soft light blooms. Not harsh, not blinding. Gentle, like candlelight behind thin skin. A figure appears. Not solid, not ghost, just presence. Elisabetta. She doesn't speak. She smiles. Behind her, mirrors appear on the wall. 12 of them. You recognize each reflection. Each woman who has poured. Each one who has remembered. Even Allegra saw her. Even you. Elisabetta lifts her hand, places it against the basin. The wine vanishes, absorbed. And a single word burns itself into the stones. Compita. Completed. You cry. You don't mean to, but you do. Allegra does too. Neither of you speak as the light fades, the figure dissolves, and the chapel stills again. But it feels different now. Not sacred, not haunted, just whole. You leave the chapel as the sun sets, walking in silence, Allegra beside you. She says nothing, but her fingers brush yours once, just enough to tell you she's not carrying it alone anymore. And that night, back in your room, you find the bottle has stopped humming. The bloom inside is gone, but on your pillow lies a single black ribbon, etched in silver. Pour now, for them. You sleep that night as if you've never slept before, not deeply, not peacefully, but completely. Your body sinks into the mattress like it's being absorbed into the wood itself, spine to spring, muscle to linen. There are no dreams, no vines, no whispers from root or reflection, just breath. Yours, unshared, unhaunted. It's the first time since you arrived that sleep doesn't feel like a gamble. When you wake, the bottle is still, not inert, just resting. Like something that's done what it was made to do. You don't touch it. You dress slowly, brutal, fingers remembering the ritual of it all, the shawl folded twice and the ribbon knotted at your throat, the pin that clasps your sleeve tight over the wrist. Everything is as it was, except you. In the hall, the air smells of cinnamon bark and sweet myrtle, a blend used not for ceremony, but for closing, for endings, for safekeeping. The scent trails down the stairwell and curls into the dining room, where for the first time all 12 women are gathered at once. You enter. They rise. Lucrezia stands at the head of the table. Her eyes meet yours. "We're ready," she says. You nod. You don't need to ask what for. There's a place for you at the centre. Not at the head. Not beside Lucrezia. At the centre. As if the entire table was arranged around you from the start. No mask, no goblet, no scroll. Just you. The women sit. No one pours. No one eats. Lucrezia speaks again. For generations we have preserved the ritual, the memory, the offering. We've poured the truth into silence and into soil. We've fermented sorrow and filtered it through centuries. And now, she gestures to you, we pour something new. You rise without thinking, your hands don't shake. From a basket beside your chair you lift a carafe, not glass, not metal, it's ceramic. Pale and rough to the touch, shaped like a heart that's been turned inside out. Its contents are opaque, but you can feel the weight of it. Not just liquid, memory, but not Elisabetta's memory, not theirs, yours. You step forward and begin to pour, not into goblets, into the table itself. There are shallow depressions carved into the wood, like veins. You never noticed them before, though they were clearly always there. One by one, the grooves fill with wine, forming a spiral that glows faintly as the liquid settles. Deep garnet, almost black, but shimmering with gold threads when the light catches it. The table hums, the women close their eyes, and then, softly, they begin to speak. Not aloud, not with voices. You feel them, each one pouring their memory into yours. You see a girl in Venice, her feet stained with wine, running from a convent. You see a woman in Florence kneeling beside a body, cutting a lock of hair to place in a bottle. You see someone on a balcony in Vienna dropping a letter into a fire, and another in Lisbon hiding a recipe beneath the floorboards. 12 stories, 12 women, 12 vintages, all pouring into you. You do not collapse, you do not flinch, you open, and the table absorbs it all. When the last drop leaves the carafe, the spiral completes, and in its centre, a single flame. No one lit it. It simply appears. Lucrezia speaks again. This is the final rite. She produces a small knife, places it gently before you. This isn't a sacrifice, she says. It's an infusion. You nod. You slice your palm, let the blood fall into the spiral's heart. The flame flares. The spiral glows gold, then dims. The wine is gone, absorbed. The table exhales, and just like that, the rite is complete. Now for your historical note. In a fragment of correspondence found in the estate of a 17th century Tuscan noblewoman, there's reference to La Spirale Rossa, a private rite performed once per generation, requiring the blood of a new memory keeper. The record claims it sealed the lineage and reminded the root not to forget. No other records of the spiral exist. The letter ends with the words, "It is not inheritance, it is absorption." After the ritual, no one speaks for a long time. Eventually, Lucrezia rises. She kisses your forehead. "Welcome," she whispers. Not as witness, not as servant, but as source. The other women approach one by one. Some touch your hand, some touch your shoulder. One places a grape in your palm, another gives you a ribbon. Each gesture is quiet, final, affirming. When you return to your room, the mirror has changed again, no longer fogged, no longer weeping. It shows you. But you're different. Your reflection wears white, the same white the novice wore, only now the novice is gone. You understand what that means. You were never watching her. She was showing you the path. You look to your dresser. Where the goblet once sat, a new vessel now waits. A pitcher, unmarked, smooth, empty, but waiting. Your quirky fact for tonight? There are whispered tales of secret societies where new memory holders were given a white vessel upon ascension. Not to drink from, but to pour into. The idea was that once filled with the right memory, the vessel would overflow without being touched. The first sign it was full, the mirror in the memory keeper's chamber would begin to reflect other lives. You sit before your mirror. You wait. And when the glass shifts, you see her, Elisabetta, smiling. Behind her, others, all the women who poured, all the ones who remembered. They do not fade. They wait for the next telling and the next pouring. You begin waking earlier, not because of nightmares or house murmurs, but because the stillness before dawn has started to feel like yours, the air just before the bells, the hush before footfalls stir the dust. It's the hour when the mirror is the most honest, when it hasn't yet remembered who you're supposed to be and still reflects everything you've become. You sit by it now every morning, pitcher in lap, or watching, listening. The women no longer knock, they drift in and out of your days like fog through open windows. No ritual, no fanfare. Some leave you offerings, a dried flower, a slip of linen stained with wine. A book of half-written notes. Paola brings you a single glass bead and says nothing. Isadora leaves a pouch of seeds that rattle like tiny bones. You don't ask what they'll grow into. One morning, Lucrezia places her ring on your dresser. The mourning ring, the one she wore for the woman who poured before her. "I'm not mourning anymore," she says, then gently kisses your temple and leaves. You don't put the ring on. You place it beside the pitcher. Let it rest. That day, Allegra returns. She's different now, lighter somehow, as if some thread has been unclenched in her chest. She joins you in the east garden, where the last of the grapes are clinging to their vines, like dreams that haven't quite ended. She picks one and holds it up to the light. "You know what makes them taste the way they do?" she asks. You nod. "Memory?" "No," she says. "Pressure." You look at her. "It's not just the soil," she continues. "It's the crushing, the fermentation, the slow surrender of shape. That's where the flavour comes from. That's what the wine is." You nod again, slower this time. "You were crushed," she says. "Yes. And now? I'm pouring." She smiles. "That's how it's always been. The wine tells its story not when it's drunk, but when it's poured." You leave the garden just as dusk turns the sky to rust. You can hear laughter from the upper halls. Genuine, if brittle. Something is shifting. The house is lighter now. Not in structure, but in tone. The walls still groan, the mirrors still hum, but there's less weight in the steps, less silence in the wine. And yet your pitcher remains empty, not dry, just waiting. One night you dream again. This time you're not in the vineyard. You're underground. Not the cellar, not the stone room beneath the spiral, deeper. Here there are no walls, only earth and root and time. You're sitting on the floor, the pitcher in your lap. Before you, a woman with her back turned. Her hair is black, streaked with ash. She hums. You don't speak, you wait. Eventually she turns. It's not Elisabetta. It's not Lucrezia. It's not even you. It's someone you don't recognize but still somehow know. She smiles. It's time. For what? To pour. You lift the pitcher. It's full now, not with wine, but with something thicker, weightless. It smells like ink, like thunder, like your mother's voice when she said your name softly through a locked door. You tip the vessel. You pour. It doesn't hit the ground. It disappears mid-air, absorbed by something you can't see. And when it's empty, the woman says, again. You pour again, still full, again, endless. You wake up gasping, her heart racing. The pitcher on your dresser is glowing, not bright, not warm, just barely lit, like a single ember pulsing under ceramic skin. You don't touch it, you just watch. The next morning, the house is busier than usual. The women are dressed for travel. Shawls, gloves, letters clutched to chests. Lucrezia finds you in the hall. Some are leaving, she says. Permanently. Just long enough to pour somewhere else. You look confused. She smiles. You didn't think it all stayed here, did you? You hadn't thought about it. Not really. It moves, she says. The memory, the wine. Us. We're not roots, we're rain, we fall where we're needed. And that finally clicks into place. This wasn't the end of the ritual. It was the beginning of carrying it. You walked the grounds slowly that afternoon, past the chapel, the herb garden, the trellis, and the forgotten corner where the stone door once stood. It's still gone, still hidden, but now you understand it wasn't a place meant to be revisited. It served its moment. It opened when it needed to. Now it sleeps, like wine. Back in your room, the pitcher glows stronger now. It's no longer waiting to be filled. It's waiting to be used. You pick it up. It hums in your hands. You walk to the window. Outside, a woman is arriving. Young, shawl wrapped tight, eyes wide, steps cautious. You know that walk. You've done it yourself. You watch her hesitate near the front door, unsure if she's in the right place. If she's allowed to be here. If she'll survive it. She will. Not all of her, but enough. You open the window and pour just a little. 3 drops. They hit the ground below with a shimmer you can't see but somehow feel. She pauses, looks up, not at you, at the sky, as if she just remembered something. Then she walks through the threshold. Here's your obscure historical nugget. In a hidden 18th century ledger from a Sienese women's collective, there is an entry that reads, "We no longer wait for seekers, we rain the memory on them. 1 drop is enough. When they find the door, it will already be open." The line was circled, underlined, then crossed out, then rewritten. That evening, the pitcher is light again. You set it down gently. The mirror reflects you now, not in candlelight, but in vine light, green and red and gold. The hallway outside is silent, until it's not. 3 soft knocks at your door. You open it. The new girl stands there, eyes wide. She doesn't speak. You don't ask. You simply move aside, let her in. She walks to the mirror, or to herself, doesn't flinch. Then she sees the picture, and touches it. Not to take it, just to know it's real. That you smile, so does she. Then she says, "Do we begin now?" And you answer, "We already have." The picture no longer glows. It doesn't need to. Its presence is enough now, quiet, constant and understood, like breath, like dusk, like ritual performed so many times the body no longer waits for instruction. It simply moves. You show the girl where to sit. She watches your hands more than your words, absorbing the cadence of your gestures, the meaning behind your silences. She touches nothing without permission. She asks no questions. But you can tell behind her wide eyes, boy, the roots are already curling inward, preparing to hold. The first lesson isn't about wine, it's about dust. You hand her a cloth and say, "Start with the corners." She blinks. "What am I looking for?" "Nothing," you reply. "That's the point." She doesn't understand, not yet, but she will. In the hours that follow, you return to your own pacing. Not leading, guiding. You walk beside her through the halls you once feared. You point to the curtains stitched with phrases in Latin that no longer require translation. You stop at each portrait and wait to see if she sees what you saw. In some, she does. In other walls, she gasps. One. Elisabetta's empty frame makes her reach out. "Why is this one blank?" she whispers. "She chose to pour forward, not backward," you say. "The frame isn't for her. It's for the ones who carry her memory. She frowns. That's us? You nod. That's you. You show her the chapel, now quiet again. The altar has shifted, just slightly. The basin in its centre is gone. Or maybe it was never there. You're not sure anymore. The stone has smoothed itself, memory folding into matter, the way wine folds into breath. That night, she finds you in the garden. Do you miss her? She asks suddenly. Elisabetta. She nods. You think for a long moment. I don't miss her, you say, because she's still here. The girl stares at the vines, now heavy with grapes again. Fat, purple, bursting. I heard her name in my sleep, she says quietly. She knows your name too, you reply. Later, in your room, the mirror reflects you both. She looks at it like a map. You look at it like a window. The difference doesn't matter. Both are tools for crossing. You give her first goblet. It's smaller than yours was, unmarked, smooth. It doesn't hum yet. It will, when it's ready. She holds it in both hands like it's warm. Do I drink? No. Do I pour? Not yet. She stares into the empty bowl. What do I do? Wait, you say. Let the memory come to you. Don't chase it. That night, you dream of fireflies. Not symbolic, just firefly. 1,000 tiny lights blinking in sync across a field of dry grass. You stand among them, barefoot, wine pitcher in one hand. They don't fear you. They settle on your arms, your neck, the rim of the vessel. One lands in the wine and glows red. You wake with the taste of citrus on your tongue. The next day, the girl tells you her name. It doesn't surprise you. Of course, that's her name. She asks you to show her the bottle. You hesitate. But eventually, you take her to the wardrobe, where it still rests beneath your folded clothes. The speaking wine. The bloom inside has hardened, curled into a glassy fossil at the bottom, unmoving now, preserved. She leans close. Is it safe? No. Can I drink it? No. She smiles. Can I listen? You nod once, and she does. She places both palms around the bottle, closes her eyes. Her breath catches, then steadies. When she opens her eyes again, she's not crying, but she looks older, like something just shifted in her spine. A weight dropped into the place, the kind you carry with your teeth clenched. You don't need to ask what she heard, you already know. And now, a whisper from the archive, an untranslated folio from the 1700s references vino silente. Silent wine, not because it made you quiet, but because it chose when not to speak. The wine would reveal itself only to those with the patience to listen for something other than a voice. Some described it as a hum. Others said it was a pressure behind the eyes. One woman claimed she saw a memory not her own, a child being named under candlelight by a woman who had no mouth. That evening, you and the girl sit together on the balcony. Below, the vineyard glows in the moonlight, the leaves rustling like a conversation too intimate to overhear. The house is still. Even the mirrors seem to be holding their breath. She speaks without looking at you. What if I forget? You will. She turns, startled. You nod. That's part of it. We all forget. Then how do we pass it on? You smile. By pouring. The pitcher beside you vibrates once, gentle, like a sigh through stone. She looks down at her goblet, still empty. But not for long. She'll pour too, and someone else will drink. Your quirky historical footnote for tonight. A 9th century French mystic once claimed that the purest wine was not the one you drank, but the one you remembered tasting. He believed memory had flavour, that grief, joy, betrayal and forgiveness each had their own distinct vintage. He died penniless and unnoticed, but his journal, found decades later, included a single phrase circled in red ink: "Nothing ferments like silence." You tuck her in that night without needing to say a word. She's already half asleep, her hand curled around the goblet like a child clutching a stone. Back in your room, the pitcher has cooled. The mirror is empty, blank, ready. You understand now. You are no longer the vessel. You are the vineyard, and the vines are listening. The air shifts in the house, not in any obvious way, no great breeze sweeping through or thunder rolling in, just a slow change. The kind you feel in your fingertips before you even register it in your lungs. It's harvest season again. The grapes are ripening faster this year, so fast it seems they're trying to outrun something. Or maybe they're reaching for it. Either way, the vines are full, heavy, humming. You can hear them when the wind dies, a rustle that isn't quite movement, more like breath returning to the soil. The girl, your girl, though she has her own name now, walks beside you through the vineyard with the same cautious reverence you once had. She touches the leaves lightly as she passes, fingers trailing, and murmurs names under her breath. Not people she knows, not yet, but women she's heard in dreams, in the low vibrations of the house, and in the pause between heartbeats when the goblet warms. Today is her first pour. You can feel it in her. The way she keeps glancing down at her hands like they're carrying something she forgot to pick up. You bring her to the westward slope where the grapes always ripen last. The soil here is darker, more fragrant, laced with rosemary and fennel and some other older scent that doesn't belong to anything in this century. She kneels. You kneel with her. She speaks first. What if I do it wrong? You smile. There's no wrong pour, only unfinished ones. She nods. Her lips move silently, a name, maybe hers, maybe someone else's. Then, with trembling hands, she lifts her goblet and tips it to the earth. The wine spills slowly, dark, viscous, almost reluctant. It soaks into the dirt like ink into a letter you didn't mean to write. Nothing happens, not at first, and then, beneath your knees, you feel it. Warmth, pulse, the vines beside you bloom instantly. A cluster of white flowers erupts beside a gnarled base. Not grapes, not anything you've ever seen before. They smell like crushed fruit and old paper. She gasps. You place a hand on her back. It worked, she says. You nod. She doesn't cry. But her voice breaks a little when she says, "It wasn't my memory." "No," you say. "It was hers. You carried it. She let you." You don't need to say the name. The girl already knows it. That's how it works now. You walk back to the house together, as dusk gathers like ciel sunstorming spilled ink along the horizon. The windows glow gold. The bells don't ring tonight. They don't need to. Everyone in the house already knows what happened. You find a bundle waiting on your bed, wrapped in violet silk, a pin shaped like a spiral, inside a letter, unsigned. She poured well. You taught her. It's time. You sit for a long time with that letter in your lap. You know what it means. It's not an ending, it's a shift. Some keep the house, some carry the vine. You walk back to the garden and find Lucrezia at the well, drawing water by hand. Not because she needs to, because she always has. She sees the letter in your hand and smiles faintly. "Where will you go?" she asks. "I don't know yet." "You'll know when the mirror stops showing only your face." You tilt your head. "It hasn't done that in weeks." She nods once, satisfied. Later you gather your few belongings, none of which you arrived with. You leave your original goblet behind, nestled in the hollow of the cellar door that reappeared for just long enough to swallow it. You leave the diary, now thick with entries not written by your hand but still in your ink. You keep only the picture, and one grape. The girl finds you in the vestibule, barefoot and frowning. "You're leaving?" You nod. "There's someone else who needs the pour." She hugs you without asking, tight, quick. "Enough." You whisper, "Don't forget what the silence means." She nods. "That the story hasn't finished yet." You smile. She's ready. And now your grounded historical fragment. Some records recovered from abandoned wine sanctuaries across southern France describe women who left behind no graves, no titles, no heirlooms, only vines. Unique cultivars that bore grapes no one else could trace. One such vineyard grew in the shape of a spiral. Its wine was said to taste like salt and rosemary. The cellar beneath it was sealed with earth, but locals say you can still hear someone breathing down there on nights when the moon is you. You walk through the vineyard at dawn, pitcher wrapped in cloth, grape tucked into your pocket. The road curves east toward the places where the vines are wild and unclaimed, where no one has yet taught the earth how to remember. It's not farewell, it's migration. You follow an old path carved by women who walked before roads were named. Each footstep settles softer than the last, until your presence is no longer disruption but resonance. By the third day you find a house, stone, empty, barely standing. It hums, you smile, it will do, you clean the hearth, repair the roof, lay rosemary beneath the window. You place the pitcher on the sill and wait. You don't need to call them, they'll find you, they always do. One night, just before the new moon, a girl knocks. She doesn't speak. You open the door, offer her a goblet, and say, "Tell me who you remember." The girl's name is Mira, or that's what she offers. Names you've learned are often temporary in these rites, borrowed, reshaped, sometimes handed down like heirlooms no one quite remembers how to use. She crosses the threshold with bare feet and a bag slung over her shoulder that clinks faintly as she moves. Inside, 3 empty bottles, a half-torn letter, and something that smells like dried figs and coal smoke. She says nothing for the first hour, just watches. Lets her breath align with the body of the house. This house is different from the last. Smaller, less ornate. The walls lean just slightly, like they're listening more than standing, but it hums in the same way. A low vibration you feel in the floorboards, in the doorframe, in your fingertips when you brush the window ledge. The vines haven't reached this far yet, but the soil has begun to soften. And the picture? It glows every night now, faintly, enough to guide without overwhelming. You give Mira her goblet on the second day. She hesitates before touching it. "It's heavy," she says, lifting it carefully. You nod. That means it's working. She doesn't ask what it is, she doesn't need to. She follows you through the rituals, the pacing, the waiting. She kneels beside the hearth, wraps dried herbs in muslin sachets for the windows, and dusts the forgotten corners without being told. She listens more than she speaks. She watches the picture like it might change shape if she blinks too long. One morning you find her standing by the door with one of her empty bottles in hand. "I think it's ready," she says. You nod once and take her to the east slope. Nothing grows there yet, but the soil has warmed. She kneels, pours just a few drops of the liquid she's been fermenting, something sharp, floral, strange. When the wine hits the dirt, a patch of moss begins to bloom. She stares at it, then at you. "That's not what I expected." You smile. "It never is." And here's your final fact. In scattered oral histories, ones rarely recorded but often remembered, there are mentions of moss wine, a term not used for a drink but for a story so old it forgets it's a story and simply becomes place. A taste that can't be bottled, only grown. These wines didn't pass through the lips. They passed through generations, not by swallowing but by settling. Back in the house, Mira writes her first page, not in the book, not yet, but on a piece of thin bark, using a stylus dipped in berry ink. You watch her hands move, her mouth shaping the words silently, like prayer. She doesn't ask for feedback. She just writes. Then she burns the page in the hearth. You don't stop her, you understand. It wasn't meant to last in its original form, only to release something. One night, as the wind rises and the picture begins to hum louder than usual, you walk out to the edge of the garden and feel the pull. Not a call, not exactly. More like a tug behind your ribs, gentle but firm. There's someone else coming. Not yet. Not for days, maybe weeks. But she's already on her way. You return to the house and write a name in the condensation on the window pane. It disappears before Mira sees it. She doesn't need to know yet. She's still learning to pour. By now, you've stopped dreaming of Elisabetta. Not because she's gone, because she's moved into memory's proper place. Not a visitor, not a warning, but a thread, woven in. You still wear the spiral pin. You don't have to, but it reminds you of the pressure, the crushing that makes things bloom. It reminds you that silence is not the absence of story, it's the fermentation. On the last night of this moon cycle, Mira asks the question all of you eventually do. Will I ever know the full story? You shake your head. No one ever does. She frowns. But isn't that the point, to gather it all? You pour her a measure of the newest blend. Not yours, not hers, a mingling. The point isn't to know, you say. It's to remember enough that someone else can keep going. She sips, her eyes widen. What does it taste like? You know she's asking more than about flavour. You smile. It tastes like something trying to remember itself. She nods slowly. I can work with that. You think back to your first day. The mask, the wine, the mirror. Now the mirror shows only sky. It doesn't need to reflect anymore. It just opens. Somewhere far from this house another woman pours. You feel her. She may never meet you. But your pour reached her. That's the quiet miracle of this whole thing. You pass it without touching. And when the time comes, when your picture is finally too light to glow, when the vines around this house have learned enough from your footsteps, you'll leave this place the way you arrived, alone, barefoot, heart full, but next time when you knock there will already be a goblet waiting, because now you are the memory being carried. You are the wine someone else will remember tasting, even if they never touch their lips to it. And now your last quiet, quirky historical offering. In the private correspondence of a French midwife turned vintner, she wrote that she no longer needed barrels, bottles, or cellars. She said, "The body is the final vessel, the tongue the last cork, the pour is what we leave behind in the soil of the ones we teach." Her letters were buried with her. Her vineyard still grows, wild and unkempt. The grapes taste like wind and stories untold. Mira sleeps soundly now. You do too. The house breathes. The vines listen. The root remembers. The silence ferments. And somewhere deep underground, a voice whispers, "Pour now, for her." So, here we are. No more spirals, no more firelit mirrors or whispering bottles, just you, Mira, and this final breath of story exhaled softly into the dark. If you've made it this far, still awake or maybe barely clinging to consciousness beneath your blanket with the fan humming somewhere in the background, you've carried this tale further than most would dare. Because let's be honest, you weren't just listening. You were pouring too. Every time you leaned in, every time your breath caught at some name half lost in dust or wine, you helped finish something old. Something that started long before Elisabetta whispered her truth into a sealed bottle. Before Lucrezia passed her ring. Before a girl with wide eyes knocked on a strange door with silence tucked in her bones. You helped carry memory. Let it swirl, let it settle, and maybe somewhere in your own life, whether you light candles or scribble things you never show anyone, you've felt the weight of an unfinished story pressing just beneath your ribs. Maybe this one opened a space for that. Maybe it fermented something. And if you're wondering what happens next, who pours next, where the next vineyard blooms, or what ritual awaits behind someone else's closed door, that's not really the point, is it? The story isn't supposed to end, it's supposed to echo. So when the air shifts around you or the dust catches the light just right, or a glass of wine tastes faintly like something you can't name but almost remember, don't panic. She's still in there, you're still pouring, and the root, it remembers, always. Now dim the lights, let the last drop fall. And if you feel the urge to whisper something before you sleep, don't worry if no one hears it. The house always does.